Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. If I could just remind everyone that in line with legal requirements, this meeting is being held face to face, but members and the public can still join the meeting and participate online. For the benefit of any members of the public, it is only the councillors present, and those are everyone in this room that has a white nameplate in front of them. And it is only the councillors that take the decisions at the meeting. There are other people at the meeting who are officers who have this coloured nameplate, and officers are here to advise the council. The agenda and papers have already been published in advance of this meeting back on the 18th of March. Clearly, the meeting is being live webcast, and we will also be making an audio recording of the meeting, which will be published on the council's website in due course. In terms of health and safety, there are no planned fire drills today. So should the fire alarms go off at any point, we will ask you to all follow the fire exit signs and congregate in the main car park, please. If anybody needs assistance, should that happen, again, if you could raise your hand and then officers will come to assist you as part of that. If any councillors wish to speak on any particular matters during the meeting, again, if you could follow the usual procedure and raise your hand and then wait until the chair invites you to speak. When you do speak, please, again, can you use the microphone in front of you so that people online can hear what you're saying? And finally, just a reminder that in terms of the rules of debate, those are all set out in the council's constitution. That is also published on the website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Scott. If we now move into the agenda, apologies for absence. Back to you.
Thank you, Chair. I have been notified of apologies from Councillor Ujala, Councillors Baker, as in Jason Baker, Councillor Boyden, Councillor Cottle, Councillor Dance, Councillor Ellis, Councillor Height, Councillor Hewitson, Councillor Kenton, Councillor Toneylock, Councillor Messenger, Councillor Tessamont, Councillor Evans, Rigby, Robbins, Slocum, Snell, Soughton, Wakefield, Wren, Councillor Burt, and I believe Councillors Cook Woodman and Councillor Healy are en route to the meeting and will arrive during the course of the meeting. And those are the apologies that I believe we've been notified in advance. But again, group leaders may be aware of others that they may wish to notify.
I know Dave Mansell wants to come in.
Yes, thank you. Also, Councillor Shane Collins, please.
Are there any? Yes, Martin.
Councillor Connor Payne, please.
Thank you. Any more? Yes,
Councillor
Lucy.
Philip Ham, please.
I may have missed it, but Hayward Burt, Councillor Burt.
Sorry, yes, John.
Yeah, I think Hugh Davis can't make it either. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think that's all hands covered. Moving on to item 2, which is the minutes of the previous meetings. Is it your wish that I sign the meeting minutes from the 12th of February and the 5th of March? Yes, everyone agreed? Okay, thank you. I'll do that at the end. Item 3, I'd like to pass over to Stephen Hellard. But before I do, this is Stephen's last meeting with us. Stephen is moving on to a new opportunity. So on behalf of the council, can I thank him for his service for this council and wish him the best in the future.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, just a normal reminder, any business of the council relates to or affects the DPI, which you've declared, disclose it at the meeting. When we come on to the agenda, well, preferably now, but at the very latest when we come onto the agenda item. In terms of declarations of interest, we've received the normal declarations in relation to membership of town, parish and city councils.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. As agenda item 8, I will be leaving the room as I have a non-registrable interest. My profession is listed on my declaration of interests. However, it's probably best if I do not take part in the vote or the discussion.
Thank you. Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just say what he said, please. In exactly the same way, I will be leaving the meeting during agenda item number 8 because I have an unregisterable interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I can't see any further hands. So we move on to item 4, which is public question time. We have 3 speakers this afternoon. I'll explain that in a second. But just to remind each speaker that they have 3 minutes to put their question across. All councillors have received a copy of the questions, so there's no need to completely read it out. You can overview it, but you have 3 minutes. Our first person is Brenda Prentice.
Does that work?
Yes, you have 3
Brilliant.
minutes.
Thank you for letting me speak to you today. I came in December, but I wasn't accommodated, and this is the first time I've been able to be accommodated. I think you've all read my letter to you. Have you all read it? Oh, thank you. Can I also ask if you read the letter that was published in the County Gazette in 2002 from me, which I also submitted? Oh, it seems that few people, if anyone, has had this. It was a letter that was published from me in the County Gazette in 2002. There was a picture of a cornfield with a beautifully cut footpath through it, and I thanked the landowner for obeying the law and doing the right thing and asked that other farmers did the same, or land users. Sadly, in all that time, very little has changed, and I'm here to ask you today to look at the policies and procedures of rights of way, because nothing seems to have happened in 20 years. As I've said in my letter here, there are precisely 6 wardens to look after the rights of way in this whole county. I'm sure most of you from time to time enjoy a pleasant walk in the countryside, and we should be treasuring this paths that have been handed down to us by our forefathers. They shouldn't be abused by ploughing and cropping. This is the policy written in 2018 on how to report ploughing and cropping. Whoever wrote this doesn't know what the 1948 Act says about rights of way, because it is not correct. So I don't want to bore you all reading this whole thing again if you've already read it, but all I would tell you is, in my opinion, nothing has changed in rights of way. It is still biased towards land users and against people who just want to simply have a little walk in the countryside, or a big one, because actually there's a lot of tourism revenue in rights of way. A lot of people come just to walk in our pleasant countryside, on the Quantops, on the Black Downs, in the Mendips. We should be treasuring this, not abusing it. That's all I want to say. Please, can you see that the policies are changed? It's not to do with finance, although more finance would be nice. It's to do with the way the policies are written and the way they are not enforced.
Thank you. Can I ask Richard to respond, please?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. I'm going to your question submitted had a very specific example, and I'm just going to respond to that first of all, and I'll respond
Are
more
you talking about Pitminster?
at Durston.
Durston.
So the proposal to divert a path in Durston has arisen as a result of a recent planning application. Historic development has created many obstructions on the path network due to the proper process not being followed by the developer at the time. The Rights of Way team work hard to ensure that further obstructions are not caused by modern development, and also try to tackle historic development obstructions wherever possible. The costs of making such changes to the path network arising from development can be and are recovered from the applicant.
They are not completely recovered.
In the vast majority of cases, diversions orders are cost neutral, effective way of resolving obstructions on the network. And just more generally, obstruction, defects and hazards are the majority of the issues reported on path networks. Ploughing and cropping reports account for less than 1% of the reported issues. Underreporting of issues is likely across all such types. The team historically has had a dedicated enforcement team, and enforcement action for ploughing and cropping has been undertaken in the past and will continue to be where possible in consideration of available staff resources, which unfortunately is less than it was. 20 years ago, only 50% of the network was open and easy to use. 22 years ago, a mere 35% was, which does go to highlight that the state of the network is in a much better place than it was 20 years ago. It is acknowledged that the current workloads are challenging with the resources available. The team are working with the parish councillors and other organisations to assist with keeping the network open and free of obstruction, and continue to review procedures to identify the best use of limited resources. But please be assured that we do prosecute where landowners consistently fail in their duties, and we feel it is the best course of action, and we will continue to do so. So thank you.
I've asked how many people have been prosecuted, and I've been
You
told
will,
none.
you will be getting a full written answer from Richard on this. So
It's incorrect.
well, if we can just, if you wish to speak to Richard afterwards or whatever, then we would go from there. But you will receive a full written answer.
I do really well.
Next speaker is Nigel
I'd like
Bean.
to say that they were
Sorry, could you?
benefiting from Target 2000. That finished in 2000, and since then it's going downhill.
Okay, thank you very much. Could Nigel Bean is our next questioner. Can't see him in the room or online. So what we'll do is, other than the published list, I've added an extra public speaker. Unfortunately, there was an IT issue which, had it be worked okay, would have come in within time. So could I invite Jonathan Williams, please, to Wilkins, sorry, not Williams, sorry. That was a not very good start, and my apologies.
Stick it on there if I may. You can hear me all right, I trust, yes?
Thank you.
Dear Council, my name is Jonathan Wilkins and I own and run the Wilkins Safety Group. My question is in relation to the red brick building fiasco in Glastonbury, sometimes referred to as Building C or the Life Factory. I was appointed in 2023 to be their principal designer, which is a duty under the design and management regulations. I'm also their health and safety advisor, and we also carried out an asbestos survey because one of my team does that. And we were told when this job started that it was being financed by a government grant, which is being administered by you good guys here in the council. Work started in September 23, all seemed to be going to plan, great, until April last year, when we had no payment. Red Brick said this because the Somerset Council were unhappy with some of their paperwork that they'd sent in, but all be back online within the next week or two, so don't worry. Well, here we are 12 months later, and we haven't had a penny. During this time, I, along with other creditors, kept receiving emails from Red Brick's chairperson, Indra Don Francesco, apologising for delay, blaming the council, and assuring us that we will be paid. However, they seem to forget that, you know, while they drag their heels, we, the creditors, are suffering. I personally, or Wilkins Safe Group, today, we're owed £23,746.80. That includes out-of-pocket expenses and interest as per the Late Payment of Commercial Debts Interest Act, and it's going to increase by £6.21 every day. The whole episode has had a detrimental effect on my health. As you've probably seen, I now suffer from fibromyalgia, which is caused by stress. There's no cure for fibromyalgia. I have to take, control it with pills and things, and I hate taking pills, but I've now got high-powered painkillers and antidepressants. But added to that, for the last 20 plus years, and you may not have this in the one that was sent out a bit back, the last 20 odd years, I've been full-time carer for my wife, Angela, who suffered from mental health and physical problems. She became very upset seeing me struggling with this whole Red Brick fiasco. During this time, she'd seen me struggle, and she struggled with that, and because she said it's her having to do with her health is interfering with what I'm trying to do with this. And sadly, last Friday, 5 days ago, she took her own life. So, thank you, Somerset Council and Red Brick. But not only have you not paid me, you've stolen my wife, stolen her mother and her daughter's granddaughter. And just robbed me. My wife has been married to her 35 years, and you robbed me of her. And also yesterday we had the undertakers around, and it's going to cost me between £8,000 to £10,000 to have a funeral. I haven't got that money because you've still got it. So please, can you do what you can to pay myself and the other businesses? And there's a lot of good businesses there. I've tried speaking to my local MP, but she doesn't seem to want to answer me. I've spoken to the deputy head of the council, Liz Lachon, who's probably here somewhere, but I don't know who you are. And you said you want much you could do. All I do is get told we can't pay until we get the external audit back. Well, I've spoken to SWAP Internal Audit Services, and they have confirmed that they sent you the audit weeks ago. And they sent it to your interim chief finance officer, Maria Christofi. Is she here? So you've got the information you need. We need paying. I'm in a desperate situation as well. And I know one of the builders, I spoke to him today from TML, he's virtually suicidal because he's owed £350,000. So can I ask you lot to please do something about it today, not 5 months' time? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Liz Lation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. As you know, we have spoken on the telephone a number of times. I'd like to offer you and your daughters and grandchild my sincere condolences. I do realise from conversations with you and with other contractors the impact that this situation has had on your businesses and on your personal lives. And I think every person in this room will thank you, as I do, for coming here today to explain that to us. And you will have the condolences, I'm sure, of everyone in this room. I understand that does not help your situation and your business. So because the question came in and didn't arrive in the right email inbox, we will be sending you a written answer. The Deputy 151 officer is here in the room. The interim Section 151 officer is still here, and and you'll see from papers later, colleagues will see that she's here until the 25th of April. So we will get you as full a written response as we are able to, drawing on Southwest Audit Partnership, our internal auditors as well. It is a regrettable position. We are the accountable body. So Somerset Council is the accountable body. Government is the funder of the town deals, all 101 towns in England. So as the accountable body, we receive the monies from government, but we receive them on receipt of claims from us. We receive those claims from each of the 10 projects in Glastonbury, and I think it's 10 projects in Bridgewater. In order to draw that money down from government, we have to have all of the information needed to draw that money down. And without all of the information we need, we are not able to draw that money down. So it is not Somerset Council's money that is paying for the town deal projects. It is government money. So it's all taxpayers' money, not just Somerset taxpayers.
Yeah, I was aware of that bit.
Yeah. But I thank you for your time in all the telephone conversations, and also with the proprietor of TML as well. I will speak to him again, to Keith, and again, our condolences, and thank you very much for coming here today.
Is there anything more I can send you to speed it up? Because we need money. I mean, I've sent you lots of things. I can send you more.
I think we've got a huge amount of information. All that information does not sit with us just as the council. It sits with MHCLG, the government department, and it sits with Southwest Audit Partnership, as well as with our finance team. So I undertake to call a meeting tomorrow with the 151 officer and her deputy, who's sitting right behind me, and I'll ask them that we provide as full a response to you as we are able to give. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And I'll just add to it very quickly, when you do sort out the money and pay, can you please pay the creditors, not Red Brick? Because we know from other things, Red Brick don't then pass it on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilkins. Can I add my condolences to you and your daughters, and thank you for coming along today to say what you've said. Thank you.
Thank you. It was difficult, but thank you.
Thank you. Not debating. Okay, can I just give another call for Nigel Behan to see if he's in the online? Doesn't seem he is. So as the questions and the response have been published, we will send him full written answers to his questions. Okay, we now move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is Somerset Council redundancies requiring full council approval. And I hand over to Theo Butt-Phillips.
Thank you very much, Chair. As members are aware, as a result of the restructuring that has been taking place, that better? Yes. Thank you very much, Chair. As members are aware, as a result of the restructuring taking place, we are in the process of making a considerable number of redundancies. It is always regrettable when we see our much valued staff leave, but it is a necessary part of our response to the financial emergency. Any redundancy with a value of over £100,000 must come to the full council, and so, as members are well used, we are presenting today a list of those redundancies, the 7 posts in total. I'm not going to say any more except to observe that it is noticeable that were it not for the significant amount of pension strain that we are required to pay, none of these would be coming to the full council because none of them would be making that threshold. I'd like to formally propose the recommendations and hand back to you. I think you have a seconder.
Thank you. Can I go to Liz Lation?
Thank you, Chair. I will be seconding, but I will reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I open it up to any questions? Yes, Lee.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, really. These are legally required payments. The pension element is a legal requirement. So what we're saying in real terms is these employees are getting the redundancy they are due. And it shouldn't, at no point are we looking at the individuals. This is the process correctly being administered.
That has been acknowledged. Okay. Are there any? Yes, Diego.
More of a comment, Chair, just reading through that report, just to note really, in 5 days, the total workforce will be reduced by, 562 full-time equivalent posts. We're about to lose, obviously, a vast amount of knowledge, talent, skills. I hope that we're prepared for the impact that this will have on the organisation. Time will tell, but just at this moment, I want to thank every single member of staff for the experience they've given to the organisation, the time, and they no doubt will be missed. And I just hope they go on to something as exciting as Somerset Council has been for them.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the paper. Just a quick question, really. We had some of these went through on a paper at our last meeting. I'm just asking really on behalf of the staff, because obviously there's been a delay to these, why they didn't all go through on one paper. And I'm just really keen that we keep sort of delays and things hang in the air for as short a time possible for our staff.
Theo, do you want to answer that?
I mean, we've had a series of these. I'm not quite sure that it was ever envisaged that they would all go through at the same time, but I don't know. I know that Alan and Dawn's online, so if they have anything to add to that. But as I say, I was never expecting them to come through all in one big go. I was always expecting there to be a number of them over time.
Alan.
Thank you, Chair. There are a number of different recruitment processes involved. There were a number of colleagues that were placed at risk through that redundancy process. A number of those colleagues expressed an interest for a different role and have gone through a recruitment process as a result. That process has naturally taken time, and this is the outcome of some of the recruitment processes as people have gone through that ring fencing. So that's why they will emerge in these waves. Thanks, Chair.
Liz and Mandy.
I'm just really conscious. I mean, normally we don't have this many full councils. We've had a number of them in short succession. I suppose my concern is that moving forward, if they're sort of stretched apart, you wouldn't want the staff to experience those sort of time delays associated with full councils. But I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yes, Suzanne.
I'll just say it again. Is that better? It's because I was looking at you and speaking. I think I was trying to be. I'll do that. Just to say that the reason I asked the question is that whilst we've had a number of council meetings close together recently, I've now got feedback. That isn't always the case. And I think for staff, you know, once that decision is made, I wouldn't want to see too many delays in it going through a similar process to keep them sort of hanging on longer than they need to have that ultimate decision put through.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any more hands that go up? No, I can't see any. Back to you then, Liz, if you...
Thank you, Chair. And I do appreciate the concern that Councillor Chilcott has about timescale for individual members of staff. Completely acknowledge that. But on the other hand, the way the ring fencing has worked, that obviously has made it a longer piece of work. But that will be, of course, to the benefit of those who then move into slightly different or new roles and stay within the council. So I do appreciate the pressure that all our staff have been under, like you. I know that this has been 2024 and into 25 has been a long year for many people, and it has been extraordinarily hard work too for those who've been administering the HR processes that we've gone through. And like you, I appreciate the work that every single member of the council staff team has done in the past and of course will do in the future. And, you know, there will be a huge amount of work still to do as we continue our transformation programme and our journey to a more sustainable council, which is what we all want to see. So I am very willing to second these recommendations, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, back to Theo. Do you wish to add anything before we move on to the vote?
No, thank you. I don't think I have anything further to add.
Thank you. Okay, the recommendation has been put and seconded with those items on page 35 of the agenda. Could I have a show of hands, all those in favour? Any against? Are there any abstentions? Okay. Oh, one abstention. Okay. Right, moving on.
Sorry, I was very, very late. I've been to Bridgewater Hospital and got held up there.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Welcome. We move on to item 6, which is the Somerset Council statutory offer appointments, which I'll just hold fire while 2 officers leave the room. Okay, Theo, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is the report to designate new statutory officers, both the monitoring officer and the interim section 151 officer. Members will recall that as a result of the reorganisation that took place, there was originally a plan for the Chief Finance Officer post, well, for the Section 151 post to sit in Tier 3 of the organisation. There was originally a plan for the Monitoring Officer post to sit in Tier 4 of the organisation. Taking on board the responses to the consultation, taking on board the Code of Practice for Good Governance issued by CITFA, LLG and SOLAS last summer, taking on board the recommendations of the CITFA report, which I hope all members have now had the opportunity to read, and taking on board the response of the LGA peer challenge that this council underwent. There have been changes as that process has been undergone. As members will remember, when we voted on the new structure, there were changes in those areas, so that it is now envisaged that the Chief Finance Officer will be a Tier 2 post, sitting alongside the Executive Directors, and that the Monitoring Officer will also be one of the Executive Directors, as outlined here. We've recently undergone a process of seeking to recruit a permanent Chief Finance Officer and Section 151 officer, as our interim Chief Finance Officer will be leaving next month, as has already been mentioned. That process did not yield a permanent candidate, and therefore we are putting in place an interim arrangement which will allow us to look again at that recruitment process. On the monitoring officer, it is very clear from the recommendations that we've received that that should sit much closer to the top and centre of the organisation. Therefore, structurally, it makes sense for that position to be given to the Executive Director for Resources, Strategy and Transformation. So that is the recommendation that is here. In terms of the capacity for that role has been undertaken on an interim basis by the current Executive Director for Resources, Strategy and Transformation. And that has been done and will be done with the assistance of multiple deputies who will bring different skill sets to the role to be able to complement the work that the executive director does. So I would like to formally move the recommendations which are on the papers in front of you, which are that the statutory role of Chief Finance Officer on an interim basis be given to Nicola Hicks, and that we designate the role of Monitoring Officer to the Executive Director of Resources, Strategy and Transformation, Alan Jones.
Thank you. Can I pass to Liz Lation?
Thank you, Chair. I will be seconding this. Again, I would like to reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Okay, on that, I'll open it up for any questions. Yes, Sue Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. I read this report with great interest. I also read as well, I haven't read the whole CIFA report, but I did read the 45 recommendations along with the recommendations in the peer review group. And one of the themes that comes out is that we must get on with that transformation business case at pace, and it needs to be done now. In fact, frankly, it probably needed to be done yesterday, if truth be known. The person that is in charge of that, the strategic resources, Alan, we're now asking Alan Jones to also take on the dual role of monitoring officer. Now, for us, it might be good business. You're getting two for the price of one. However, how convinced are you that Mr. Jones will be able to give the 100% commitment to driving that transformation change through and embedding it so the savings are realised and the organisation is in effect streamlined and actually works effectively without needing yet more corporate resource financing? How is he also going to manage the monitoring officer role as well, when we know some very complicated cases do come forward and do consume a lot of time and energy? Alan Jones is a very talented, capable officer. I don't doubt it for a moment, but he's also a human being. He's not Superman. And I have to say, are we in danger of overloading this officer? And are we now going to pursue the other recommendation of the CIFA report, which was to actually appoint a specific director of transformation to focus 100% on this? What are the future plans? But I have to say, I am concerned about the workload that we are putting on one individual. You might be saving sixpence today, but it could cost you a shilling tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Osborne. So I'd make the point that it wouldn't be usual to have a full-time monitoring officer purely as a monitoring officer job. It usually, if not always, sits along another role, be that a legal role, be that a governance role, be that a senior executive role. So it's not about good business saving money. It's about which of the roles is appropriate for it to sit in. I recognise the concerns about capacity. Mr. Jones has 2 or 3 deputies at the moment, and it will 4 deputies at the moment, and it will continue to be the case that he will have multiple deputies sitting under him. On the transformation issue, I think Councillor Osborne's raised some very good questions there. It is absolutely essential that this council puts sufficient resource into that. Reading the CIFA report, it is clear that we need additional capacity on transformation. Mr. Jones's current role is not purely transformation focused, be that with or without the monitoring role. It encompasses other things as well. And we are well aware of the need to make sure that is properly resourced. He does, of course, have a service director who works on transformation, and we are recruiting a new head of transformation as well. But we are also looking at the possibility of bringing in an external transformation partner. We haven't got to the formal decision-making stage of that, but we are absolutely committed to ensuring there is sufficient resource and focus on transformation.
Andy Dingwell. Diogo first, okay.
Thanks, Chair. My kind of questions around the CFO. So as I understand it, our interim chief finance officer is leaving. An interim chief finance officer is taking her place before, in all likelihood, another interim chief finance officer is appointed. But I just don't think that's a very stable place to be in, considering the financial challenges that we're experiencing as a council. As part of the budget setting process, I think there was within the report, it says there was a budget provision of 200,000 for the CFO role. Based on current rates of pay for interim, that in itself will not be enough to cover an interim CFO role for the whole year. But what I do want to know is, are there any implications or knock-on effects for the wider finance leadership structure because of these interim arrangements? For example, are there any other roles being extended during this interim period to support Nicola that perhaps was not envisaged prior to budget setting process? And if so, has that been budgeted for?
Yeah. Or Liz, whichever.
If I may take this before I actually speak as seconder. So completely understand your concern. Maria Christofi was originally contracted to stay with us till the 31st of March to see us through the budget setting. She's been able to agree to stay another just over 3 weeks. And I'm really grateful, as I will say in a moment, to Nicola Hicks that she has been able to step up to take this interim role. We were obviously hoping that we would move from the interim situation we have now to a permanent position. I think it's fair to say that there are a lot of people working in local government at the higher levels who are actually moving between councils now. And with the government moving forward on local government reorganisation at great speed, there are, of course, going to be people coming from both county councils and district councils, and possibly looking to move to unitary councils, because those unitary councils will already have been through LGR. We need a chief finance officer who has experience of both those services that we know have come through to this council from the county council and from the district councils, and including a housing revenue account. So it is really important that we make the right decision and the right appointment. And it is disappointing that we have not been able to get to this stage of extending Maria Christofi's contract by a short while until we can start with a permanent CFO, but we are not in that position. And so what we have to do is make sure that we have the very best possible cover. I take your point about the allocation of funding that was in the budget, a clearly stated separate line of 200,000. We do have 2 other people in the organisation on an interim basis at the moment who have seen us through the budget setting, who are both able to stay on to support Nicola Hicks. I'm working with Maria Christofi at the moment because we need to make sure that we have whatever mentoring or coaching support Nicola may wish to have for the next months as we go back to recruitment again, either permanent or interim. I remember back in, I suppose it was about 2018, when there was an interim chief finance officer at the county council, and I remember then a conversation about how there were so many interims working in the country in the 151 positions, and that is still the case now. It is not unusual for a council to have an interim, and where it's possible to divide for Mr. Jones, where we can pull in interim support on transformation, the chief finance officer has to be the qualified officer, and we need that person to have experience of all of the services of a unitary council. So I believe that the decision we have in front of us today is absolutely the right and the best decision for us at the moment. And then we will obviously re-embark on the recruitment that has proved unsuccessful recently. Thank you.
Did you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just really quickly then. So we know, therefore, from what you've said, that there's 2 interim positions that are also going to be extended for a period of time. And I'm just wondering whether that's reflected in the financial and risk implications part of this report, because I don't know what the financial or risk implication of that is. It's not being made clear in the report if it is one.
Thank you.
But Chair, I would have to come back. I would have to ask for some advice from the very people we're talking about, actually, and then come back to you with a written response on that. But it's a very fair question. Thank you.
Andy Dingwell.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions. The first is regarding the S151 officer. So paragraph 3.5, I think it's page 46, confirms that the attempt for recruitment was unsuccessful. Has there been any analysis done to understand why that initial recruitment failed specifically? What are the results of that analysis if it has been done, and what's going to be changing next time in order to make sure that recruitment is successful? My understanding from this conversation that we're having at the moment is it feels that maybe we're shopping for a unicorn. There's a lot of skills required into one person here, and is there been sufficient analysis on the market to make sure that that particular skill set exists? Or basically, how are we going to make sure it's successful next time? The second question actually came out of Theo's response to my colleague on my left. So regarding the transformation, you've mentioned bringing in partner support. When will members, what's the timeline for members to be briefed in detail on this? Basically on the onboarding of another management consultancy, specifically budget, timeline, resources that it's going to take from the council, and the scope of the project. Thank you.
If I could just go on the section 151 Chief Finance Officer first. I obviously don't like to say too much because the individual people have been involved in this, and I don't want to say anything that could in any way indicate who I might be speaking about. But I hope that the comments I made about needing that experience across the services of a county council and the services of a district council, I hope you can take that as the answer to this question too, please.
I think, Councillor, that answer is where my question comes from. So what is being done to make sure that you can recruit someone who fits the bill that you've described in your answer to Diego's question?
So the first action is that you don't appoint. And then the second action is that we go back to the consultants that we are using, the recruitment agency. They write up a very detailed report, which the leader and council and I were able to read because we queried some things and then we were able to read the entire report. So I would suggest to you that the recruitment agency are absolutely all over that. Because it refers to individual people, those reports are clearly not made widely available, and absolutely correctly.
Last time.
Completely agree. I'm going to press you on this one because I'm not sure I'm getting the answer. You're going to go to the same recruitment business, and we're sitting on a recruitment panel together next week. So I understand the reports that are put together. I'm not asking for names. What's being briefed to the recruitment consultancy differently this time to make sure that the process in the summer is successful, where this process wasn't successful? We didn't find the right people this time. We don't need to talk about names. We're going out to the same pool of talent with the same brief and the same recruitment agency. What's going to be different this time to make sure we are successful so that we can be confident that in the second half of this year we'll have a permanent person in place?
So, Chair, I should say that the recruitment agency are telling us 2 things. One is that the pool of suitable officers for permanent posts is very small, that the pool of officers for interim, section 151, is healthier, so a greater number of people. They will play back to themselves, I'm absolutely sure, what they put in their report, which identified the weaknesses that meant we could not appoint permanently this time. And as you'll know, I'm sure members know, we did not get to the stage of an appointments committee and appointments panel. We did not get that far. So what we have to do is work with those recruitment agents to look at where we are more likely to get a suitable candidate. Is that back out to the permanent market straight away? Is it to an interim market? But the thing that matters most to me, and I'm sure it will to everyone in this room, is that we have a proper plan to get to budget setting for 26-27, because as Maria Christofi has said to me, although she started at the end of August, beginning of September, she said that was quite late in the year to start that really serious budget setting. You'll know, of course, that A, we were in a financial emergency, and B, we were going through a restructure. So they were very specific circumstances. But we do need to establish a position where we have somebody acting as our 151 officer who can take us from this earlier this summer than it was last summer, right through to, again, the end of March 26, so that we get that budget set. Because what we don't have is the luxury of time. We don't. We need the transformation, but at the same time, you'll recall from the budget setting papers and the medium-term financial strategy that we are looking for 30% of our financial improvement from business as usual savings and 70% from transformation. Those business as usual savings need to be coming forward as soon as they can in the new financial year. They're not waiting for April 26. So it is too easy in a local authority where the years tend to be separated out to work towards budget setting and work towards February. We can't do that. We don't have that luxury. So where you talk about transformation taking time to produce sustainable, cashable savings, we can't wait for February 26. We need it to continue. And so I believe that what we have in this paper as recommendations, with Nicola Hicks taking over from the 26th of April, is the right thing to do. I will take Councillor Rodriguez's questions about the cost of the interims who are supporting Nicola and Maria at the moment, and will continue. And I will make sure that we have got those resources in place to work through this summer, and also to take us through with the recruitment agents where we need to go.
Theo, you wanted to add something?
Yes, just to respond to the second part of Andy's question. Liz has touched upon not having the luxury of time. Having said that, I'm not in a position to outline a time frame for when we will brief members, discuss that with members. It's an early stage in that decision-making process. Having said that, it's a process that will move quickly, and I'm completely committed to ensuring that members from across the council are well cited and well briefed and have opportunities to ask questions about that.
Bob Filmer.
Thank you, Chair. Mine relates back to monitoring officer, if I could, and certainly I had some queries relating to capacity, which Councillor Butt-Philip has already. Sorry, I'll get closer. Is that any better? So my question was relating to the monitoring officer and capacity, which Councillor Butt-Phillips has addressed in his answers already to some degree. But I just wondered whether it's possible. You mentioned that there is support that would be there through deputies. Whether you could give members more detail on that, possibly through a written reply, but just so that we know what that support is and how we have the ability to make sure there is that, because as was mentioned earlier, the monitoring officer can come under huge amounts of work, not only from within this authority, but from the lower tier authorities that are underneath us. So we'd just be very interested to know that you could share that with us as to where that support is coming from.
Theo?
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to share that, and I think it would be appropriate to share it in a written briefing so that all members have the opportunity to read that. But what I'll say for the moment is, obviously at the moment I think Scott is one of the deputy monitoring officers, unless he's going to shake his head, and Stephen is one of the deputy monitoring officers who obviously has a legal role covered there, and we also have another monitoring officer on a 0 hours contract, so that means that they can be brought in if needed to, who've got a great deal of experience, particularly at district level. And those are the sorts of arrangements that we expect to continue with, but I'll make sure that a proper briefing is sent out.
You want to come back, Bob?
It was only just to say, and in terms of the ones you just mentioned, we've just been told at this meeting that one of those officers is leaving us imminently. So it's just with all the restructuring that's going on, I think we're all struggling to know who's still here and can still do what they do. So that briefing would be really helpful.
John Hunt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. A couple of my points have already been made, but firstly, it's a shame. I appreciate, and I have spoken to Maria as well on this. It's a shame that she isn't staying on herself, but I appreciate she has other places to be. I don't have an issue at all with Nicola taking the role on. My concern is, as has been said, about the fact it's interim again. But I do understand why that is. My question then is slightly different to what I was going to ask. In the case of Nicola now, she is interim, yes. Is there a way of creating a situation where we can train her properly to become a full-time proper 151 officer? And if that could be done, would this surely not save us money in the long term? I don't know if that's a way around that, but training I would have thought would be the way forward. And in terms of 6-2 with Alan Jones's appointment, I can see that. I don't have any issues with that at all. But could we not please train Nicola if that's what she wants, or is it specifically that she's asked to be an interim and in the same way as giving a notice of 6 months or so in advance? Thank you.
Liz, would you like to take that?
Thank you. I can say that Nicola Hicks has been a Deputy 151 here for 2 years already. Those some in the room will remember on the appointments panel when we appointed her. And if you wanted an education in how to be a 151 officer, I would suggest working with Maria Christofi is about as good as it gets, really. I've learnt so much from the different 151s that I have worked alongside in opposition and since May 19. And you learn lots of different things from different people. We all have different skills and experience. Maria Christofi's approach, a robust but very comprehensive approach, and I believe she has put us in a better position, and this is not in any way denigrating any earlier 151 officers. We went through vesting, we went through Microsoft Dynamics, and the first year of that being extremely challenging, and we're in a better place now. I believe the budget setting papers we had this year were particularly comprehensive. I think all of the work that Maria has done for us in producing all of those more technical reports, some of which go through audit rather than scrutiny on their way to full council. I think it's been excellent work. I know how much I've learnt from Maria, and I don't think we are not in the correct forum by any means to talk about anyone's capability to do a job, because this paper would not be in front of you if we did not already believe that. Thank you.
John, you just wanted to come back.
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you for that. And I do agree with you on Maria. On the basis of what you've just said, that you can have no better teacher, etc., etc., why then are we not employing Nicola on a full-time basis rather than interim? And if she does need a little bit extra, can we just get her that extra and solve this problem with Nicola? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
I'm sure Nicola will be delighted to hear those words. The decision in front of us today is just that. It's a decision on the in the agenda to appoint an interim. It is this is not the forum in which to discuss whether or not someone might make an excellent long-term appointment. If Councillor Hunt would like to discuss his thoughts with Liz offline, I think that would probably be a more appropriate way to take this discussion forward.
Mandy.
Thank you. I won't be verging into commenting on particular officers, but I will say, having also worked with a number of 151s at district and at county and unitary level, each come with their strengths and weaknesses, and it's a package, and some might be really strong in other areas and others in others. What I will say though is I am disappointed we're not in a position to appoint permanently. I think for the staff, every new interim that arrives comes with new ideas and thoughts, and that puts extra time and pressure on the staff. And I think as an organisation, we feel vulnerable. That golden triangle right at the top of our council, our chief exec, our monitoring officer and our finance officer, we have two of the three that are not permanently in positions, and I think that's a weakness. I have to refer back to the CIPFA and the Solace advice that we had that was referred to. I sat in this chamber and said very strongly and loudly it was against the CIPFA and Solace best advice, the actions that were taken previously. I stand by that, and I am pleased now that their report that came out before decisions around the previous 1.51 were made. I'm glad now that that's been listened to, and I just have some element of I wish that further consideration had been given prior to these decisions. I will also say that my understanding was that when our current interim 151 was appointed, that this process to look at a permanent 151 was going to be started in September last year. That was the original date that was going to be looked at with a mind to recruiting through to December and getting someone in place for the start of the year. And we're now at the start of the year, approaching in a couple of weeks, and we are now looking at another interim. So I think you're darned right, time is not on your side. This is a council under pressure financially. I think good officers at level are like hen's teeth. I think that's what you'll experience in the market. I think when you are talking about transformation as well, and that element of it, I think that puts another pressure and skill set. And as I sit here now, knowing and understand the market as others do, I don't know if that person's out there. And I think that will be the challenge for this council, attracting somebody with the pressure we're under financially, with the right skills. I'm not sure there are many, if any, out there. The glimmer of hope on the horizon is that there are a lot of new unitaries that will probably be created over the next year to 18 months. And with that in the market comes movement. And I hope that that will create some movement around the country in these positions. And at that point, you can find someone permanent. So I'm delighted we've got something in the interim. I am saddened by, I suppose, the lack of pace and the fact that we haven't got someone permanent, because I think for the staff moving forward, that's absolutely the best thing for them and for this organisation. And I wish you all the best with the next round. Thank you.
Dave Mansell.
Thank you. I wish to comment and ask a question in relation to the Chief Finance Officer appointment, and my concern is in the areas already raised in relation to the capacity of the council, and in particular the development of the council's plans to address the financial crisis that we are in. I have to note, and we're all aware, that savings identified in previous years are still not fully delivered, and we're still to identify how some will be delivered, and these are savings that have previously been agreed. We know for 26-27 we've got a budget gap of £100 million again to close. So echoing some of what's been said on all sides, we don't have time to get this sort of situation sorted out. At the moment, from what I have seen, there has been no plan to members on how the budget gap for next year will be closed. Nothing specific at all. And I think that's important. Well, it's clearly important, it's absolutely essential that we need to see a plan for this. I would also say I think it's really important that there's involvement of members in this. And we're not seeing a lot of that because the council is in such a bad situation. Could I ask what reassurance can be given that a plan is being prepared and won't be affected by the arrangements been making for these appointments, and what further reassurance can be given to councillors about how this is being progressed and how we may be involved in helping to close that gap and identify what's needed? Clearly, one thing I've got in mind is last minute surprises in the budget is not something which we wish to see again next year. And we do need the reassurance of knowing how the council is going to deal with the deep financial crisis that it's in. And I'm not getting the sense or even information on what is being done and how it's going to be done quickly enough. Thank you.
Liz, would you like to reply?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I recommend Appendix G for George of the budget setting papers, which is where Maria Christofi has laid out what she believes we need to do to move towards closing that budget gap. She has said, and I'll repeat, that it may still be necessary to go to government for some element of exceptional financial support in order to set the budget for 26-27. But then that there is a reasonable presumption that we could move towards a budget for 27-28 without any one-off monies. You'll recall, of course, the dedicated schools grant deficit and the place that that plays in the future lives of so many up-tier councils in this country, with that being one of our very biggest risks. So I completely take your point about members wanting more involvement. My answer would be simply that corporate and resources scrutiny is the right place for that, as is the audit committee, because having attended every one of those meetings, I think probably since, well, probably a lot earlier than May 22, but that is where the work of questioning of officers as well as members happens. And I think the audit committee has been particularly robust recently. Our external auditors certainly very robust. What gives me some assurance, but the assurance is about how big the challenge is that all of those reports, our external auditors, the CIPFA review, the corporate peer challenge, they all, and our own annual governance statement, of course, they all tell us the same story. What we have to do is have that one overall overarching transformation plan that addresses every single one of those recommendations. And that is the work that we are already on. But I completely accept your point that members need an easier route in to understand what that work is, what pace it's going at, and where we can expect to see particularly savings, but also the transformation plans come through as we get into the new financial year.
Dave, I'll let you come back before we move towards the vote.
Thank you. I think it is important. I know I've read Appendix G. I don't believe there is detail in there. I also draw attention to the fact that we've had a statutory recommendation on the council, two of them, one of which says that we need to have a plan for how we're going to close the budget gap. And it says that we haven't yet got a plan. And what I'm talking about is details. I believe Appendix G, I haven't looked it up or checked the wording, but I think it's in general. It gives no detail on how it's going to be done. And I believe the conclusion that Maria had was along the lines that this council needs more income, more savings, more council tax. It was along those lines that it was said. I think it's the detailed plan. I'm looking for reassurance that someone is working on that plan and the detail is going to come to us and that we can be involved in it. That is the point I'm trying to make, not the generalities, because I don't believe I've seen them and I don't believe they're in Appendix G. So I hope the point is made, but that is what I'm trying to drive at. And I do think the situation is such that we may need to have wider member involvement in all of this than we're having so far. I'm not seeing the crisis that the council's in. I'm not seeing evidence that it's being sufficiently faced up to with detailed work. Thank you.
Liz, do you want to go back?
Then Councillor Mansell, I'd just say you're jolly lucky you've got your job, not mine, because that is what I think about from getting out to going to bed every day and half the night as well, quite often. So we have another month with Maria Christofi with us, with Nicola working as Deputy 151 Officer. We will be working through that month to ensure that we are in a better place. Maria has made the point again and again, she will not allow savings to come forward for decision until she is absolutely convinced that they are robust. And that is where we are with that work going on. So it does not come to the executive, to the wider membership until she is convinced those savings are robust. But her whole point is that they can't wait for February 26. They must start coming forward as soon as possible. And there are all the areas, so the headlines are in Appendix G. I take your point. If Appendix G did everything, we'd probably be calling it the transformation plan, because we've got that 30% to come from savings, the 70% to come from transformation. So in the short term, they need to work on parallel tracks. They will converge when we have the overarching transformation plan in place. And that is, as Councillor Butt-Phillips has said, where we know we will need some more human resource from people who have experience of transformation in this scale of council, not in a district council with a turnover of under 20 million, but in the scale of council that we now have with all of those services. So you're right that we need to bring that forward, but we will not bring it forward until it is in the right place. And we can then have a look at where that convergence point is between the savings that are part of business as usual and the transformation plan that will be about how we deliver the services of this council, but in a different way. And some obviously will change more than others. I think that has to be said too, because some of what we do is statutory. How we deliver it is not in the statute. That is for us to decide how to deliver it. And we need to make sure that that gives the best value for the people of Somerset, because although the council tax has gone up an additional 2.5%, for a lot of people, 7.5% extra on their council tax, as well as additional energy increases, water bill increases. Some people will have rent increases, mortgage increases. I do accept that it is not an easy time for household budgets.
Sue Osborne.
Thank you, Chair. I guess one of the consequences of winning an election is you've then got to sort of live with the consequences of that. So you've made the bed, so lie in it. That wasn't my point, though. My point is to raise the issue of 0 hours contracts, because in your response to one of my colleagues' questions, you stated that some of the support, I think it was to the monitoring officer, was provided by an employee on a 0 hours contract. Now, we know that in the forthcoming employment bill, Ms. Rayner has made it very clear she doesn't like 0 hours contracts, and they are to go. So there's two questions arise from this. The first one is, how many staff do we actually have on 0 hours contract, and how much is it going to cost us to put them on perhaps a different type of contract, and have we budgeted for that eventuality? And in this case, specifically providing support to the monitoring officer, how is that going to be delivered in the event that 0 hours contracts are a no-no?
I think we're slightly wandering off piste here, but
if Councillor Osborne would like to write to me for a written response on the wider issue, that's absolutely fine, and we'll get one. But what I would observe is that whilst there are different sorts of 0 hour contracts, I've personally had 0 hour contracts when I worked as a consultant in the past. There are the abusive 0 hour contracts, which are used in place of full-time contracts by some employers, which I think is what the Deputy Prime Minister wants to get rid of. But they are also a perfectly normal tool that is used when you have forms of casual staff when you wish to expand your capacity. If there are changes to the law, we will obviously react to them, but I would be absolutely amazed if we could not find a situation where we could bring in additional resource as and when we need it.
Right, I'm going to go back to Liz now and give her option of speaking.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've probably said everything that I want to say. I just want to make the point, if we approve these recommendations, then we will have a permanent chief executive, a permanent monitoring officer and an interim section 151 officer while we go back out to recruitment for either permanent or interim, depending on what the market brings us. So I thank the officers for the good work they're doing. I don't know if you've missed some questions, perhaps, Chair. I'll take a break in case you've missed questions.
Sorry, as long as this is on piece.
Really quick as well. It's just a question on the language. So Nicola works for the council. So is she not an acting 151 rather than interim 151? Just so because I don't know if you can make somebody internal interim, and I don't want us to then have to redo the decision because it's not safe. Sorry.
Okay, so I understand they mean the same thing, but we can ask. It's a fair question. Thank you. We can ask what if we take the decision this afternoon. We can ask the head of HR, the service director for HR and OD, what that job title should be for the duration, however long that might be. Thank you.
Theo.
Chair.
I don't think I have anything to add, just to observe that we've had a lot of staff who have had the title interim over the past year, which is now being regularised. But yeah, we can get a definitive answer for that.
Okay, right. The recommendations have been put. Can I have a show of hands, please, those in favour? Anyone against? And are there any abstentions? Yeah, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 abstentions. Okay, that's carried. Could we retrieve the 2 officers, please, that left us? Right, if we could now move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is the Somerset Council pay policy. And yet again, it's you, Thea.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to present and propose the approval of the Somerset Council pay policy statement for 2020. What year are we in? 2024, 25? 25/6. This is a report that we are required to consider at full council on an annual basis. The contents of the report is factual and is required to be laid out. It sets out the methods by which salaries of employees are determined. It sets out the remuneration of chief officers and deputy chief officers. It sets out the remuneration of the lowest paid staff and the relationship between the remuneration of the chief executive and other officers. It has been discussed at length by the HR committee, and it is that committee which is sending it to the full council for consideration. I don't have anything else to add at this stage, but I'll happily answer any questions.
Faye, I believe you're seconding this.
Thank you, Chair. And rather than reserving my right, I'm going to speak now, if that's okay. I just want to welcome the report. I mean, it's obviously a tick box exercise that we're doing, but I'd like to draw members' attention to page 57.9. There were long discussions at the HR committee about making sure that the policy isn't just something that sits on a shelf and we dust it off in 12 months' time. We know from the report that the joint negotiations will change a number of pieces of information within this whenever those settlements happen. But also with the major restructure and reduction in headcount that we will be going through in a few days' time, that median salary range, the point will change likely considerably. And I asked, and the committee asked, that we bring this policy back to council mid-year to report on those two things. Now, we know that sometimes salary settlements might take longer than September, which used to be the norm and now seems to be November, December. If it is that settlement comes forward around the September time, it would be fine to wait, I think, until then for the update of the median changes that will occur during the period of April as we lose a number of our colleagues. But I think if not, it would be useful for this council to see at our September meeting what that new median is, and that would be my clear request, but happy to second the report, and I won't reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Right, did you want to add anything as you got your microphone on or not? No. Okay, any questions? In that case, then, I would think that both the proposer and seconder wouldn't want to add to what they've already said. So we'll move to the vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour? Any against? And any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Right, we move on to agenda item 8, which is the Somerset Council Gambling Policy Statement of Principles. And I'd like to hand over to Federica.
Thanks. I just need to wait for them to leave the room. Yep. So I'm pleased to present this report today. The statement of principles for the licensing of gambling has to be published at 3-year intervals. The current statement was adopted in December 2023 following an extensive consultation. Officers and the Licensing and Regulatory Committee recommended that the statement of principle be republished so that it may take effect for the statutory 3-year period, which ends on the 31st of January 2028. And so it's presented here before you.
Thank you. I'd like to go to Nicola, who's now seconding the proposal.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to speak now, like Faye. So as Councillor Smith-Roberts mentioned, the current statement was last updated at the end of 2023. I do just want to note that we might get further developments from central government within the next 2 years. In April 2023, TCMS published a report titled High Stakes Gambling Reform for the Digital Age, which outlined a range of proposals to update gambling regulation. Implementation work was paused in the lead up to the general last year, so further reform on this is still anticipated, and I'm happy to second this recommendation.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Mandy.
Thank you. I thank the council actually for their declaration and leaving the room on this paper, and I know it's an issue, Chair, I raised with you, so thank you for that. My question's just a bit of a legal one and a procedural one, really. So when this was discussed at committee, would they have left the room then? I'm just looking for all councillors to understand there needs to be consistency, whether it's a full council, a committee meeting or a scrutiny or any other meeting of the council. Thank you.
I need to throw that at the monitoring officer.
Thanks, Chair. I wasn't expecting to be called on so soon. So from the perspective of the interest, it's members' responsibility to raise that in those committees, and it's ensuring that they do so at the start of that debate and make that decision, and also remove themselves from that debate or discussion as part of that. I'm afraid I'm not familiar whether that occurred at that particular item, but it serves as a good opportunity just to remind members of that responsibility of declaring those interests prior to that discussion and debate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That's exactly why I raised the question.
Any other questions? Right. Yes, Hugh.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question, please, to our officer who is in total control of the licensing. I see the comment that was made that as it's been finished to date now, they're now going to be able to proceed on the delivery of the new taxi private hire licensing policy. Now, I've been waiting for that to happen for about 5 years. And with the cut down in staff, how long more have we got to wait? Because this is a very serious matter. Taxis, taxis, taxis. Thank you, Chair.
Federica.
Thank you, Hugh, for your question. What we'll do is we'll take that offline so I can get an actual written answer, and I can certainly send that out to everyone in relation to your question relating to taxis, because it's just slightly different to the paper that's in front of us, but I'll get back to everyone on that.
Okay. I can't see any other hands. Nicola, do you wish to add to anything?
No, Chair, happy to second the motion.
Federica? Okay, we'll move to the vote. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Right, we'll keep ploughing on with the agenda. Item 9, the annual report of lead member for economic development, planning and assets. Unfortunately, Mike is unwell and not here this afternoon. So Liz will be taking the report and I hand over to her.
Thank you, Chair. When you stand for election and get elected and take control of a council, support your colleagues, as well as all the residents and businesses of Somerset. So here I am, supporting my colleague, Councillor Mike Rigby. This is his annual report. I'll also take the member question, if that's okay, Chair, from Councillor Susanna Hart, because it relates to the portfolio held by Councillor Mike Rigby. I just wanted, in introducing this, to say that it is an extraordinarily wide-ranging portfolio and incredibly important to the future of Somerset, not just this council. And I recall whenever it was, a year ago, possibly a bit more, when Councillor Ros Wyke made her report for that portfolio. I remember thinking then how wide the brief was, as well as how deep and how important. So I'm going to presume that everyone in this room has read this report. If you've not read it in detail, please do, because there is so much in this report that is really critical to the future of Somerset, to those 4 priorities, but particularly about how the county can flourish and be ambitious for the future, as well as more environmentally sustainable, and also in how we look after people. So I think, Chair, that this is a really remarkable annual report, as they all are, because it is only when you take on one of these roles that you do understand just how much there is in Somerset to be responsible for, and to work with such a wide range of experienced and talented officers who know so much and who are themselves, I keep saying this, but our officers are themselves educators at heart, and we as members benefit so much from what we learn from them. And then we are able to be those people who translate and interpret for residents so that they know exactly what we're doing in this council, what their council tax and business rates pays for. And it is everything from multinational developments within Somerset, right down to how we ensure that somebody is getting the right reduction to their council tax. It goes across a massive range of services. So I don't know, Chair, whether Councillor Hart wishes to read her question, and then I can take the answer to that as part of this report.
Mandy, did you want to?
Just a quick point of order. I think because it's an annual report, we will also be taking after the question. We've got questions on the portfolio with it. I couldn't.
It's just we included Susanna's question in this because it was relevant, but we will take other questions after that.
Thank you.
Okay, so Susanna, could you put your question?
Yeah. Hello. So basically, Glastonbury currently faces an unprecedented challenge with roadside caravans. There are numbering 300 vans now parked up in and around the town. And just to put this into perspective, there are 4,000 residential properties in Glastonbury. So relative to that, there are 23 times as many caravans to properties as there are in even Bristol, which has a huge problem, let alone any other area in the country. So over 2 years ago, I asked a question at full council about £108,000, which was at the time supposedly earmarked for gypsy and traveller site provision. Still no site has been established. The enablement project within the Glastonbury to Hound deal is not and cannot be considered a sufficient solution to the problem. Basically, the situation is unsustainable, and I don't feel that Somerset Council is any longer in a position to ignore it. So I really would like today to get a clear understanding of what has happened to this £108,000. Is it still there or not? Can it be used to establish a suitable site in or at least close to Glastonbury with no further delay and excuses? And also, in addition, can the Public Space Protection Order, which was unanimously passed by Mendip District Council in September 22, as part of what Liz Lation at the time described as a suite of solutions to this problem, be renewed by this council at the earliest opportunity? Thank you.
Liz, did you want to reply to that?
Thank you, Chair. So this answer is coming from Mike Rigby, but I'll deliver it for him. And as you know, Councillor Hart, you and I know a great deal about this subject and discussed it endlessly after I was elected, and so now we can discuss further. So the recent application for funds from this council will help us develop a pan-Somerset approach for stopover, transit and permanent sites for those with the protected characteristic of Gypsy Roma traveller, as well as others, including many from the Glastonbury roadside community. As we progress towards a local plan for Somerset, this work will become increasingly significant. The reserve of 108,000, which was inherited from Somerset West and Taunton, is now integrated into the updated reserves presented as Appendix N in the budget setting papers on the 5th of March. That money was specifically set aside for gypsy and traveller sites, rather than the non-bricks and mortar or van dwellers that we know in Glastonbury. So for accuracy, it's important to note that the most recent count, and we do have a count every fortnight, was approximately 150 vans and caravans on the roadside, with an estimated 300 people living either on the roadside or on council or private land. And for a further moment of accuracy, it was actually my colleague, Councillor Heather Shearer, who quoted the suite of solutions. The council's land, so this council's land, or what was formerly Mendip's land, that is known as the Moorland site in Beckery, has been divided into two sections. The first section has been sold to Beckery Island Regeneration Trust, and they have commenced work on what will be their primary car park. The trust has completed the fence to separate the two parts of the land. The second larger section of land is in the process of being transferred to a community land trust as a site for the development of a permanent off-road living space. So our lawyer, Somerset Council's lawyer, is collaborating with the community trust lawyer to complete the transfer as soon as possible with appropriate conditions. And then if I may go on, Chair, to the PSPO, question 2B. You're right that that was agreed at Mendip District Council's Cabinet meeting on October 2022. And in the written response, you will get the link to the Wells, I don't know why Wells Nub News, I'm sure it was in Glastonbury Nub News as well, but it includes helpfully the map of the proposed PSPO area, which is actually quite a significant size of area. So it is regrettable that after a great deal of work by Mendip's officers working with the police, that decision we took at Mendip was very swiftly followed by vesting day and the immense amount of work that had to be prioritised to ensure the safe and legal Somerset Council. Since vesting, as we both know, the issues in Glastonbury have become greater still with the impact of the housing crisis that we see across the country. So I have taken Councillor Mike Rigby for a drive around Glastonbury to show him the extent of the challenge that we have to provide living spaces. So this is Mike, he says, and I'll agree with him because I'll help him anywhere I can. He says, I will work with my executive colleagues to look again at the potential for that PSPO on overnight stays on the highway and continue my work as a member of Glastonbury Town Deal Board with regard to the enabling project, where one piece of land has been purchased recently and is now clear of incursions, allowing for surveys and preparation of a planning application. So it's also regrettable that additional land out of the flood zone has not been secured. So if Councillor Hart or any of her colleagues on Glastonbury Town Council can bring forward land that is out of the flood zone and could be added to the enabling project, Mike would be very pleased to hear from them. So far, all of us, both at Mendip and here at Somerset Council, have heard that most residents do indeed want off-road sites, quote, but not here. So again, in Mike's words, I should include in the answer the fact that Somerset County Council, Mendip District Council and now Somerset Council have spent many hundreds of thousands of pounds since 2016 on creating permanent barriers to overnight parking and on evictions, both on the roadside and on council-owned land in Glastonbury. We would all agree, I'm sure, that we would prefer to see public money spent on solutions to living spaces needed where people can live safely and contribute to society. But we must understand that if we can secure land to create off-road sites for people currently on the roadside, we will then create a vacancy on the roadside unless we can undertake further expensive work to create additional permanent barriers on the roadside. This is a mighty challenge, Chair. I think all of us who live and work in the Glastonbury area do understand the scale of the challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got a number of people that want to ask questions. Obviously, if we can answer them, that will happen. But if not,
To just reply at all to the answer that was given, please.
sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Sorry, I did have it up.
Okay, yes, go for it.
Oh, just very quickly, we weren't aware that a sum of money had been applied for. So what is the figure that's been secured that you mentioned at the beginning of your response? And also, I'm concerned in the terminology because developing an approach to sites is not the same as actually developing sites. So I'm slightly concerned by that terminology because what I really feel is that I have been asking for this way before I stood for the council, and I would like it to happen before I end up in my grave. So I just want us all to find a way to make this happen at pace. The same I could say for the work on the transferal of land to the community's land trust. It's been ongoing for a significant period, but we don't actually ever seem to get there. Sorry that I misquoted you, Liz, but I think we've all used the term suite of solutions, and actually we'd just like to see them come into place. I think the PSPO and making it happen is really significant and important to the whole big picture. And finally, as Councillor Lation knows from a closed meeting on Monday, the Town Council are now, whilst they are not my colleagues, because I'm not on the Town Council, they are now considering ways that perhaps they can facilitate in the finding of land. So
could we stop and suspend the meeting?
Thank you.
Okay, I think everything's resumed at the back. Okay, sorry, can you continue? continue. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, I had finished. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Can I go back to Liz then, please?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm not Mike Rigby now, I'm me. And just to say, I do have very vivid memories of exactly the same situation in the late 1960s, in the 1980s, and many years in between. However, I think Susanna and everyone on the Town Council would agree that actually it's the scale of the issue now that is the problem, and that we have lost that balance between tolerance and intolerance. And there is a great division in the town between those who are supportive of what I call the roadside community and those who are not supportive. So it's Lara Bell who can answer about the specific monies that she has been able to apply for, and I'll ask that we get a written answer on that. The problem will be, and will continue to be, finding suitable land that is out of the flood zone and where we do not have residents objecting hugely, and that when we put in an expression of interest as a council, land for sale then gets withdrawn overnight. It is a really big issue and it is incredibly difficult. It always was. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'm going to run through the people that want to ask. I'll start with Mandy.
Don't think I had a hand up.
Okay, sorry, it's not you then. Diego. Okay, yes, fine.
Thank you, Mike. I did request to maybe have what could be termed first dibs on this, because as you're quite right, I am the opposition spokesman, and I truly hope that Councillor Rigby gets well soon and is back in full voice, whether we like it or not. To move further onto a more, and that was not meant to convict you, by the way, I do hope he's better. To move on to a more serious point, I'd also like to record my condolences to Mr. Wilkins and his family. I think it was very brave, courageous and dignified of them to come forward and tell us the problems that they've had. And I find it quite shocking that when there's problems with a regeneration problem, it can potentially lead to a business that has contracted in good faith with us not getting paid and winding up facing personal ruination, not just of business life, but as family as well. He has been denied a happy and fulfilling retirement with his wife. I have a couple of requests to make from this because it is truly appalling, and I'm afraid it genuinely leaves me feeling sick to my stomach. How on earth is a council who is supposed to be able to pay its bills and should be a secure source of finance to a contracting body got into this position? It sounded as though Mr. Wilkins wasn't the only one. He alluded to another business being owed £250,000. It's not right. I've two asks. The first one is that are there any mechanisms for making interim part payments to contractors to at least keep the wolf from the door and keep them afloat? Because I was suggesting in this case, if there is a mechanism, it should be done and done quickly. My second is for an inquiry into how we've got into such a mess with this particular contract paying suppliers. How's it happened? We need to have an inquiry. We need to know why the auditor's report sat around without being acted on, among other things. We need to look at to ensure that even if things go wrong with the administration of a contract, that the contractor who's contracted in good faith actually doesn't suffer as a consequence. Frankly, listening to that public speaker, I would wonder why on earth any business would want to contract with this authority. We do need to make sure that we do look after our suppliers. And it's ironic, isn't it, that actually one of the things we asked for in procurement at scrutiny was that we actually sort of extend the 3 quotes to 4 to look for new businesses and to encourage them to come forward and grow with us. That's my comments on that point. I do have other questions.
Can I let Liz come back on that so we cover that area first? I'll let you
Okay,
come
so
back
you
in.
Yeah, I must come in here very strongly. The contractors are not contracted to this council. They are contracted to the Red Brick Building. This council is the accountable body. We sit between MHCLG, the funder of the town deal, and each project. Each project has a grant funding agreement. They had the Treasury 5-case business case before what was Mendip District Council agreed funding for each project. We paused the payments back in December 23 because of our concerns of the financial management and governance on that project. This council is not in contract with any of the contractors, and I completely agree with you in your admiration for Mr. Wilkins' bravery in coming here today. He understands, as do the other contractors who ring me at home. They know that their contract is not with this council. So we have to go through the process we have to go through, and we are working with MHCLG, with Southwest Audit Partnership, and also our external auditors to understand exactly what has happened in this project. And it is taking a long time because it is very complex. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Back to you, Sue, for the rest of the question.
Thank you. To respond to that, there's two words in there. Somerset Council is the accounting body. So we are held to account, and somebody has died and lost their business as a result of this. So shouldn't we be holding somebody somewhere to account and looking into what has gone wrong? And I welcome the report from SWAP or the external auditor whenever it comes, because I think we need to learn lessons from this, all of us. But that's all I'm going to say on that for the moment. I'd like to commend Mike Rigby for writing his own report. I think it's very rare to see a lead member write his own report. Normally it's in collaboration with officers, but I suspect there was some officer input into this. It reads very glowing, almost like a CV, and there are some good things going on. And what it does show is the breadth of this portfolio, and also that aside from the statutory portfolios of health and adults and children's, that this is probably one of the most important in terms of generating wealth, prosperity and opportunity within this county. But we, as we've just heard, that not all is sweetness and light, that these are very complex programmes and there are challenges. My colleagues are going to follow me with their questions, but I have got 4 points I want to raise first, please. I'd like to talk about the broadband contracts and how those are actually going to be delivered in practice. It doesn't seem clear at all. Wessex Broadband, which is meant to deliver in South Somerset, I'm afraid it's yet to learn about the west of South Somerset. They've delivered to 3,000 properties, but it looks as though there's significantly several thousand more. They've now got a contract to deliver Project Gigabit, which is run directly through DCMS. So how is that going to be managed and monitored to make sure that they do deliver? To complicate matters, it also looks like Openreach have won a contract. And indeed, they're now announcing on Facebook, or if you put your postcode in, we might get to you by December 2026. So how are we actually going to hold these organisations to account to make sure that they deliver, and that the 30,000 houses that have yet to receive anything actually get it sooner rather than later? I'm happy to take a written response, and I would be delighted to receive a briefing from the officer as to where exactly we are with this in terms of governance and accountability. Having access to broadband, it is fundamental. It's also fundamental to our transformation programme as well, that people can engage with us digitally and easily. I'd also like a quick update on point 46, which is the heritage. I asked last month about how the designation of community heritage assets and that we shouldn't sell them, whether there's been any update yet from government on what they actually meant by that. I'd like to go on to planning as well, which is section 457. And there is a point in there about resources. Some of you may recall that last month, Councillor Rigby took great delight at the very end of his response to my written question in saying, and I quote, "Enough councillors voted for the budget that it is passed, which enables the planning service to recruit an additional 9 planning officers." You then go to paragraph, and I'll bring it up in a minute, once I move on slightly further to paragraph 4757. I do apologise, paragraph 457, capacity. There is no mention in that paragraph about an extra 9 officers coming online. What it does say is that there's been a reprofiling of teams to enable appropriate staffing levels relative to the incoming workloads. Additional agency capacity, I actually thought we were trying to raid back from agency capacity, is currently in place until September to help bring down the work in hand to enable the state service to achieve a steady state. Now, what's the position of those 9 extra officers? And do they include, I think there was 2 supposed to be added to enforcement. So are we going to see a net gain of 9 extra officers? Or are we basically going to be replacing agency staff that are leaving? I think some clarity would be welcome on that, having been told one thing. And also, that particular answer was left off the written response in the minutes, but I'll just put that there. My third question is on skills. You can see we've got an enormous amount of programmes going, and we've actually been very successful at drawing down government funding for the running of those programmes, particularly the Skills Bootcamp, where we are actually the 3rd best performing authority. A few years back, we were one of the worst. So I think that's something that we should celebrate. But what I would like to know is, how do we communicate what is actually on offer to residents and businesses? Because it's vast, there's an awful lot of opportunity there. And how do we promote that and get it to the people that it needs to be got to? So those are the 3 questions I have. I'm happy to take written response if necessary, because I'm aware that this is not Councillor Lation's brief. And I would certainly welcome a briefing, an officer briefing on where we are with broadband, because it's fundamentally important, as is planning, that people need to know we've got a slick planning service that can do things on time. I'll leave phosphates out of it for now, because that's another debate for another day. But as you can see, this is one of the most important portfolios, one of the most diverse. I only came to this portfolio shortly after Councillor Rigby, and I'm still getting to grips with it. So bear with me. Thank you.
Liz.
Very quickly, Chair, and at the risk of boring everyone in this room, I must make it clear that this council is the accountable body on the town deals, not the accounting body. That's different. So we are the accountable body. We are accountable to MHCLG. So where we have drawn down monies from MHCLG to pay the claims from all the projects in the levelling up projects as well as the town deal projects, we are accountable for that money. That's why it's so serious for us. Broadband, I'm not going to try and answer anything except to say I find it interesting that broadband has become a utility now. And so, like water, gas, electricity, the way companies can work on the highway has changed. The historical assets, I've not had an update on that, and we do need that from government, you're right. On the planning service, Chair, I think it would be really helpful if we were to ask Alison Blom-Cooper if it were possible to have an all-member briefing on recruitment for planning. I know it started, planning enforcement too. I think of every single part of the staffing of this council, planning would be in everyone's top 3. So I think that is a really good suggestion. I think it should be an all-member briefing. Thank you.
David Fothergill.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Liz, you're not going to be able to answer this one, so I'll take a written answer. And some of it may seem foreign language, but let me start back in 2004, where certain travellers moved on a site in North Curry. And many of you will remember that. And over 6 years, Taunton Dean worked hard, spent £100,000 to gain eviction of those people from that site and to get a full injunction on that site prohibiting occupation by any person in the future. Those families or similar moved back on site on the 25th of October last year. And I'm very grateful to the officers that the work that was done in the next few months to make sure that injunction was absolutely solid and continues to be solid. And notice was served on those travellers, despite huge amounts of hardcore and infrastructure being put in, was served on them several weeks ago. That ran out today. I can confirm that nothing has moved from that site. Hardcore is still on site, all the infrastructure is on site, water pipes are on site, every single resident is still on site. That should not be there. My question to Councillor Rigby via you is, when is this council going to take some action to enforce an injunction which is legally binding? And when will residents actually begin to see some action now and not just some words? Because everybody is extremely frustrated having had all that money spent in the past and having that enforceable legal injunction in place. I will take a written answer, but I'll ask for it as soon as possible.
Okay, that's fine. We'll give you a written answer on that, David. Diogo.
Thanks, Chair. Again, happy to receive written response, but I'll read out as three quick questions from me. The first one is touching on enforcement. We know enforcement is one of the biggest gripes for parish councils across the county. This is an annual report for economic development and planning, yet there's not one reference to enforcement within the report. We know just last month that in Planning North there were 183 cases in the backlog, with 0.8 of a full-time equivalent staff member working on it. We do not know what the situation looks like across other planning areas. And that could have been clarified within this report, but it's been omitted for some reason. So my question I'd like responded in writing is fine, is how many enforcement cases are currently in the backlog across all planning areas, and how many full-time equivalent staff are currently working on enforcement in each of those individual planning areas? That's the first one. The second one is on the Bridgewater Town deal element. 23.2 million allocated for 11 projects. The report outlines the progress on Celebration Mile, the wider Bridgewater Town deal projects, but it doesn't mention any changes to the original plans that were submitted, such as the proposed small shop units along Angel Crescent. Funds were allocated to it, and that's now been dropped since, and that's not referenced within the report. So what I'd like the Councillor Rigby to clarify is what elements of the town deal have been scaled back. As well as that, we know, well, one thing I would like to know, another question on town deal, is the Bridgewater Step Up project, which is described as an exciting initiative that aims to empower local entrepreneurs and fuel business innovation, something we can all really get behind, which is brilliant. I just want some confirmation that that project is indeed going ahead. And my final one is on the Somerset Health and Care Academy. So the report notes that review of the business case and operating model for that is underway to assess the viability of a separate delivery entity. What I'd like Councillor Rigby to confirm is whether this review puts any part of that particular project at risk of being scaled back or delayed. And there's reference to the draft report being ready at the end of the financial year. I'm just wondering if that's within the next few days or is that next year? That's the only three questions I have, which I'm happy to receive written responses to.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll get you those responses. Moving on, we have got Lee Redman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. A couple of questions. Some of the points, Liz, you probably have to take away to come back, but I'll start with 4.2, Hinkley C. I may have mentioned this before, forgive me, but I'll keep going until I get some results. Workforce uplift. I'm terribly sorry. I've checked back over my own personal record, and I think, at least to the best of my knowledge, for the last 18 months, there have been more workers on site, not only that's been agreed, but actually greater than the current uplift, or the current uplift is on requesting. It's talking about 12,000 at the moment, and there's a lot more than that. I thank officers for their work on it, but the thing is, I'm afraid that the area that you're in, and a lot of this area is suffering detrimentally by the vast number of workers that are here. And I'm afraid my opinion is that this is a perfect example of the tail wagging the dog, in as far as Hinckley C are not being reasonable with this council. And I think it's about time. So my question to Councillor Rigby would have been, when are we going to get some action going and start holding Hinckley C's feet to the fire, because this is going on a bit too long now? As far as 4.3, my next point, 4.3, economic development. I've been lucky enough over the years that I've been a councillor to be involved and see some amazing economic development teams in the way that they've worked. And the fact that this council and previous councils have been benefiting from the great work that those teams have been doing. So my question in relation, and I welcome the 20-year vision. So my question is that are we happy that the economic development team, as it is in the new structure, will be big enough, wide enough, and innovative enough to be able to make Somerset Council look forward to the next 20 years in the way that is outlined in this document? My next, I've only got 2 more points, so don't worry about it. 4.3.16, I go back to previously mentioned the skills boot camp. It's amazing the fact that some of the work that's going on there, and that members, I'll ask you to take note of this project, because too often we highlight issues of concerns and criticism. The skills boot camp is now on wave 5. And that's an opportunity to give young adults the tools to be employed, and it's working with employers and money. And just for clarity, and I stand to be correct, but I think Wave 5 is currently supporting 662 learners, and they're currently looking at a 90% success rate in that, is converting from a young person, young adult, into a job. And I think that's needs to be applauded. And the question I was going to ask is, being a corporate parent and looking after obviously our children looked after, my question is going to be, is there a way that we can take that success and bring it into our children looked after team? Obviously, because Somerset's NEET numbers are a little bit high, and I think, being the corporate parent, and what would this be good enough for our children to see a success like that? Let's get our young adults that maybe between care leavers and stuff like that, but it's still a potential benefit for it. And finally, 4.42 talks about the town deals. It's a nice and simple question. Could I ask Councillor Rigby if he's content that local members are being involved at every level and are fully up to date with what's going on with those particular projects? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lashel.
Thank you. Liz, do you want to take any of those, or?
Obviously, a written answer is the right way to go. I'd just like to say this is very premature, but I had a meeting with First Bus yesterday about how we might work with them, with our care leavers, and with regard to social value. And it was really encouraging. And that gives me confidence that actually what matters is kind of getting the door open. And that is something every member in this room can do, where they know people who are themselves employers or who work for some of the big companies that are operating in Somerset. That is a responsibility that as members, I believe we all have, and where we can add value to the lives of every young person in Somerset, but particularly those people who don't have that stable family behind them to go back to. When say if they leave residential accommodation, they leave a foster carer placement, we really need to make every effort we can, every single member. And I was delighted, Councillor Redmond, by how well I was welcomed. I thought they'd think I was a real pest, but far from it. They wanted to talk to me. They want to work with us.
Heather, you wanted to add to this?
Well, add to, so rather than answer, because and I hear entirely what Lee's saying about we do need to celebrate the things we do well, and we do need to get the best practice and work across. And it's coming to me late, I'm sure you've been watching this for some time. How we support adults and young adults and people into work sits across at least 3 different directorates or clumps. And I really want to make sure, and they can stay in their directorates, they should be where their skill level is, but we need to have some cross-cutting or kind of, joining across that, because you're actually adult boot camp, the great work that Dr. Julie Young does around on our Somerset careers, all the way from primary school children up to young adults. That's really good. And then there's our going out to our colleges as well, more specifically on skills. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. And if we can find ways of doing that collectively, I think we should get together and make that work.
Thank you, Heather. Dave Mansell.
Thank you. I also wish to talk about broadband, and I'm particularly looking at 4.3.13 on page 154. And so this sort of adds to what was said earlier. My focus is on the west area, although I suspect that there are other issues, and we've already heard of some in the south, in the rest of Somerset too. But my request is, there's been a request for a briefing. That would be a good idea. I was going to request an information sheet for members, and particularly on the situation in the west area, where Airband were awarded the contract to roll out full fibre broadband, but they have been allowed to de-scope most of the areas to be covered. They're now only going to cover less than half of what they originally contracted to. This leaves about 28,000 properties uncovered. So there's a lot. I have a feeling the West situation is probably the worst of the 4, but I don't know what the situation is in the other 3 areas. But there's a big problem here that has grown over the last year or so. What I would so I really do think, and I have been asking for this already, but it's not been coming, which is why I raise it today. I think we need some clear information issued to members. I've had a bit from officers, but not quite enough to really get a complete rounded enough picture of what is happening, and I think this is really quite urgent now. So I hope this can be taken back really clearly, and it requested, and to provide some more details of what I've got in mind, and it relates to the paragraph I mentioned. It is said that CDS is discussing alternative options for these communities, and in particular in relation to the gigabit voucher scheme. Now, that is already starting to make some progress, including in the ward I represent, but by no means everywhere. And this, from what I hear and from what I can see, is going to be the best way forward for many in rural areas without full fibre broadband. What I think we need is some clear guidance on how to make that work for our communities. I'm sort of discovering how, and we've actually got some progress going in 3 of our parishes, but there's another 11 where we need progress as well. I understand there's some dates that apply and some deadlines, and this is where I must admit my knowledge becomes much more vague. But Building Digital UK, who are the national agency who fund this, are setting some deadlines in this process. And I think we really need to know what those deadlines are and which installers we can work with on the gigabit voucher scheme, how we can progress this to get it going. Locally, we're happy to work, but we don't quite have enough information to get it going. So please, can we have an information sheet and a briefing as well? I think this is really important. Thank you.
Thank you. Like the others, this will come back to you as an answer from Councillor Rigby. Moving on, where are we? We've got Ros Wyke.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm delighted that members of the opposition recognise the extremely good work on the skills boot camps. We must remember Somerset has a disproportionate number of NEETs, as they're called, and that's young people out of education and employment. And we shouldn't forget that in addition to this, we have the work going on with Yeovil College and IAERO, the Bridgewater, Taunton and Cannington College, with over 3,000 apprentices. Many of them are not at Hinckley, they're with the small and medium-sized businesses. And also there is obviously with the merger consultation beginning with Strode College. We have a really good track record for helping young people in Somerset. That's the basis of our economic growth and our retention of young people. And I just would like to just highlight the fact that the Wave 6 monies, which have now been pulled down, is 4.7 million. And 1,190 young people specifically are being targeted to support their kickstart into a career in Somerset. With all the gloom and doom, we mustn't forget that we need to support these young people, and we're doing it well. So delighted that everyone has recognised the work which is going on in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lucy, did you have your hand up? Yeah.
I did. It's only a short one, Chair. I don't think anybody could fail to be moved by Mr. Wilkins' question earlier that he bravely asked so soon after the loss of his wife. I just wondered whether the response that goes to him might be made public, because I have a feeling that a lot of people who may have heard this will be interested in what the answer is, and I wonder whether there's any mechanism to make that answer public, please.
Liz, do you want to comment on that?
I think it's a good question, Chair. I think this council, residents and businesses would all benefit from a statement from this council. And so in the absence of the leader of council, I'll meet with Peter Elliott tomorrow, 151, Deputy 151, and also Alistair Woodland from SWAP. And we can put as comprehensive a statement together as we are able at this stage. Thank you.
Mike Caswell.
Thank you, Chief. Can you hear me? Right. First of all, broadband. I was the portfolio holder at Sedgemoor, which was part of the delivery of CDS to Devon and Somerset. Together with three other councils, we pushed very hard. And we've got a lot of good work done, especially around the Wessex period, where they seem to have met all their milestones and are doing a great job, although quite slow, slowed by the need for way leaves, etc. But that's not the point. I happen to live very close to Hinkley Point, and I'm one of those that has, on a good day, a fantastic day, 0.3 of a meg. Now that may sound awful, but it's absolutely true. If you don't believe me, ask your officers, because they came out and tested it. 0.3 of a meg. And what we really need to urge broadband on around that area, around the Stagursey, Stockland Bristol area, where we survive on copper wire for 4 miles, is for this council's portfolio holders, and there was 2 of them, that have done absolutely nothing other than stand in a field with a yellow coat on saying how good we are. I can remember the days where we actually stood there and argued with CDS to get the work done in Somerset. This is clearly never happened, or not in the last 2 years. I actually offered to help. I have received nothing from either of those 2 portfolio holders or lead officers, even though my offer was there. Now, I can't do it on my own, but when I attend meetings with CDS, I rarely see another Somerset Council member. And I think it's about time we started to get, well, put it like this, ecstatic digit and get on with it.
Thank you. Like with the other broadband stuff, Mike Rigby will I'll obviously take this in and come back to you. Did you want to cut them in, Mandy?
Thank you very much. I welcome the report, and as I'd agree with others, it's a really extensive portfolio. The challenge for me is there are challenges within several of these areas. The report's very positive, and what it doesn't cover is some of the cautionary points and cautionary tales that we've been hearing at today. And I think if read in the public domain, and if read by some of those businesses we've been hearing about today, there's no recognition at all of the risks with some of these projects. So having read through and certainly looking at the town deals, we've heard today about the council's position. Again, there is nothing in the report to outline that, and I think if it's there for the public record, it should be made clear and consistent through all the reporting exactly what we are responsible for and what we are not responsible for. And I would add that my understanding is we have councillors in this council that are sitting on these boards, so we have got accountability in that way. They are there, they know what's going on, and I hope they are reporting back to the relevant portfolio holders. On a positive note, films, yay, there's more filming going on in Somerset. Really welcome that, and I think this is an industry that actually could develop hugely in Somerset. I think there's a lot of potential. We've got a lot of great sites, and the joy of Somerset, especially its rural areas, its hills, etc., is most of these areas in the country now are very busy. In Somerset, we still have glorious tranquility in a lot of these places, which if you are filming, for example, is a real boon and a real advantage. So I'd like us to all talk Somerset up and promote it for filming further, because with that comes the follow on. If you are filming here and it goes out, you then get the visitors and the tourism often to follow when people come visit, and I certainly welcome that in West Somerset. Certainly the area that I'm in, tourism is absolutely key. So I'll take that as a positive from the report. I hope that it continues to grow, but I would like to have seen a bit more balance in the report and just to highlight some of those challenges a bit more with these projects. There's the positive, but these are the risks we've got alongside them. For me, that would have provided a bit more balance to our public readers that won't be here today listening to our conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. The final name on the list is David Wone.
Thank you, Chair. Just to respond to Mandy on that, the film Somerset, I was reliably informed by the tourism people that Aidan Turner spent more time in Wales than he did in Cornwall when filming the most recent series of Poldark. So that's contributed, hopefully, a bit more to the 3.5 million that we're generating so far on that. I, as the associate lead member directly involved with parts of the work in that report, I just wanted to echo Councillor Lashon's opening words and make further comment on the staggering amount of work contained in Councillor Rigby's report. And I'd like to pay tribute to all of the officers involved. They sometimes go unsung. There's a huge amount of work going on in the background being done by a great team of officers in economic development. And the breadth of activity and the work done detailed in this 24-25 report across economic development, planning and assets is astonishing. It's carried out at an incredible pace against all manner of challenges which we've been listening to, and throughout, I might note, a financial emergency. And this work continues. Adults and children healthcare and the financial challenges rightly dominate the headlines and our focus, but I would like to press the point that behind the scenes and away from those headlines, and despite the financial and other challenges, this report is evidence there is a huge amount going on as efforts towards securing inward investment, employment opportunity and prosperity for Somerset.
Thank you very much. Right. Yes, sir, Mandy, finally.
You did name me, and just to say Aidan Turner's very welcome in Somerset or Cornwall. I'd be pleased to see him anywhere of his choosing. Thank you very much.
I'll put in a good word for you.
Thank you. Right, we're coming up to 2.5 hours, so now we're going to have a 15-minute break. So tea and coffee will be available out in the hall. Thank you.
this extensive report, almost twice as big as Mike Rigby's. You have to say it when you can. Is a summary of what's happened over the last year in the now combined portfolio of public health, environment and climate change. Can I just say that there are lots of achievements within this report. Somerset does a lot of good work, but apart from the staff who are doing that work, I must also pay some credit to my predecessors, both Adam and Trixie, who created the bulk of this. So I don't think I can claim any real credit for any of that. But the report is there, and I'm expecting a large number of questions later. But I think we're going to start, if we can, with Councillor Denton asking her a question.
Yes, if you'd like to put your question.
Thank you. Somerset Council has committed to becoming a carbon neutral county by 2030 and has stated its determination to tackle the climate and ecological emergencies. As part of this, the council promised to plant 150,000 trees per year. Yet the climate team has been cut from 10 staff members to 1, and that's according to the recent internal audit report for 2024 and 2025. This raises serious concerns about how the council intends to deliver on these crucial commitments. A vision that crumbles at the first sign of financial difficulty is not a vision at all. It's an empty aspiration. So if the council truly has the determination it claims, it must demonstrate commitment, not just in words, but in action. And then part 2 is, given the severe reductions in resources, if achieving a carbon neutral county by 2030 is no longer possible, what alternative targets or actions will the council consider to ensure meaningful progress on climate and ecological commitments? Thank you.
I'd like to thank Councillor Denton for her questions. I'd also like to correct myself that obviously I was referring to Dixie, not Trixie. I won't tell you who Trixie is, that's on another story entirely. That Adam Dance will tell you. Right. Everybody let's see. Somerset Council is committed and aspires to tackle the climate and ecological emergency across Somerset. As you can see from the 23 pages of my portfolio holder report that deals with that, Somerset Council is very active through direct delivery and through collaborative partnership working. As an example in tackling the ecological emergency, Somerset Council's local nature recovery strategy is nearing completion, is likely to go out to public consultation in May of this year, with publication in the late summer. The LNRS has brought together local actors to develop nature recovery projects tailored to the region's specific needs. Somerset Council lead the development of the strategy of the responsible authority with input from partners including the public, the local nature partnership, the farming community, the Wildlife Trust, Natural England, the Forestry Commission and the Environment Agency. With their priorities reflected in the strategy, these partners now have both a stake and agency to deliver on them. Delivery of the LNRS will also contribute towards meeting the government's environmental improvement plan targets, supporting our national objectives. The strategy puts a strong emphasis on integrating nature recovery into land use and farming practices. It will provide the solid foundation and mandate for the council to be the central role in delivering actions needed to tackle the ecological emergency and work towards ecological targets, 2030 targets. In terms of the reference to tree planting, since the creation of the tree register, there has been a collective drive to deliver this outcome working across Somerset Council, with our parish, town and city councils, partner agencies, schools, colleges, community organisations and individual residents. We've now hit approximately 103,371 trees and shrubs planted this year. I'll come on to the data for that in a second, and we are confident that we easily meet the 150,000 trees planted, as we know there's still more data to come into the register from our nature and conservation agencies and partners in Somerset and their own tree planting initiatives. The goal has really given something for Somerset to aim for and to be proud of. So the numbers, for those of you who love this sort of thing, In wood pasture and orchard, it's not strictly woodland, but it does constitute planting of up to 200 trees per hectare. And with 306 hectares, we figure that's 47,666 trees. I haven't counted them. And hedgerows, shrubs and trees, this assumes 5 stems per hectare, which is 23,120 per 7.6 kilometres. Woodland, 1,200 trees per hectare or more, 0.5 hectares or more, which is 32,238 trees in 114 hectares. But it is it is a figure that's open to distortion because the natural regeneration trees decide to breed on their own, and they're allowed to. Individual trees, we think there's another 347. I know that figure's wrong because they didn't count my trees. That's 348 is the actual figure on that. Impressively, over 200 individuals and community groups have engaged in the tree planting register. The Climate and Natural Environment Service is more than just 2 people. It's a service that's pulled together with common goals, aspiration to make a difference to the communities we service and to deliver the effective change wherever we can. The service includes areas such as climate strategy, focused on our net zero aspirations, nature's recovery and partnership, including woodland creation, biodiversity net gain, and the local nature recovery. We host 2 of the 5 national landscapes within the service, a team of green estate rangers managing our countryside and wildlife sites, ecologists support habitat enhancements and planning assessments for nature as well as flood and coastal services, and the hosting of the Somerset River Authority. As you can see, it's more than 1 or 2 people. The climate and ecological agendas are a council-wide matters, and can I just emphasise this? We can do nothing about this without the whole council taking this seriously. So it is a council-wide matters with green outcomes embedded within all council services, whether it's an asset decarbonisation in our estates, in highways and infrastructure, and with the priorities of new local transport plans, or even within the work on the green curriculum. This council is committed to addressing the climate and ecological emergency, and as my report highlights, is leading and delivering so much already, and will continue to do so for the future years, driving towards 2030. The second question, was since the creation of the Somerset Council, lots changed with the creation of new services, policies and ways of working, changes in the way assets and the council are being utilised. We have commissioned a carbon baseline report from Somerset Council. That should come out in early summer, which will provide the council with the detail of where our carbon emissions are arising within service areas, and then we can develop a clear plan on how to actively reduce emissions, where quick wins can be achieved, and what the challenges are in delivering a net zero council by 2023. I don't think that's correct, actually. I think we're going to fail when reaching 2023. This has not meant the council apologise. This has not meant the council has stood still whilst we gather intelligence and data to inform our decision. Work has progressed, as the report highlights. Significant work across the council has gone into areas such as the Alternative Fuel Discovery Day, bringing together our fleet lead, contractors and service providers, along with the wider public sector. Blue light services and organisations across Somerset as part of fleet rationalisation and decarbonisation plans, retrofit and green energy solutions for social housing, and council estates, including significant sums of grant funding to improve over 250 of our own social housing stock, and the development of an options appraisal for the Saltlands solar PV site in Bridgewater could be developed, which will be completed in the next couple of months. Working with the CO2 and analysis to integrate our Scope 3 emissions, which are derived from the goods and the services we purchase, and a pilot project with the Zeller carbon reduction tool focused on the wider public estate, and that's schools, town councils, GP surgeries, things like that, to cut energy demands and deliver net zero actions. The vision document highlights the journey we need to take and aspirations we have as a council. It highlights that to meet these aspirations, it needs to be a Somerset-wide action, working together in collaboration with others to be creative, be innovative, demanding a target-driven ambition to set the urgency needed and to drive change faster. And those of you who have listened closely will notice that I've named almost every one of my lead members in the responsibility of that. So if you ask me a really difficult question, I'll just bit of pass it sideways. I welcome questions.
Any questions for Graham? Yes.
Councillor Dunk. Yes, I've got a question about the estate buildings that we're responsible for. And when we were at Mendip, we used to try and keep a good eye on that so we could see what the progress we were making. And I realise you had reorganisation and you had to start all over again, really. But I would love to see a target. You've got a target, you've got to get them down to net zero by 2030. It would be a start if you had renewable energy contracts for each of these buildings. So that's one thing. I've noticed that from Liz's report that you use Crown Contract Services, which is a sort of group buying, if you like, semi-governmental organisation. And they do provide, they say, net zero energy. So what do they call it? Yeah, so they called it something else, I think. But anyway, I think you can do that through that group buying, and it may cost money, but I think we need to know whether we're going to do this by 2030 and to put the resources towards it, or say that we can't afford it. And I think we have to have some honesty there, but it also be good to see how we're going to meet those targets for 2030 and how we're doing. And if it's depressing, it's depressing. But I think that would be, I mean, I think you said you're still working on it. Could you give us those sort of figures for the, what you might call Somerset's footprint? I'm not expecting you to reduce everyone else's footprint who travels through Somerset, but our own footprint. Could you give us a report on that at some stage? I don't think we've had it in your report just now.
I feel that some of my answer actually did cover some of the points you made. However, I do think that looking at energy contracts is something that is happening, and certainly one hopes so I can report back on that at a later stage. Doesn't directly fall under me. Generally, estates does fall under Mike Rigby, and I'm going to get the feeling that I'm going to sound like I'm shirking these things, but that's the way my role is, that I seem to be covering lots of other areas at the same time. Can I just say that the one thing that I disagree with you on is the concept that the millions of people who travel through our county in their vehicles each summer, particularly in the summer, are not our responsibility. Well, they may not be our responsibility, but we have to persuade the public on a wider scale to take their share of responsibility beyond Somerset's borders, so that we can reduce pollution and use of the carbon over that time.
Yes, I know what you're saying. I mean, but we have to be realistic. We don't have the levers. We couldn't suggest somehow to people when they're on holiday or travelling through here that they might like to turn their engines off when they're in a car park, or buy an electric car if they can afford it, or whatever. But I don't realistically think that we can make people who don't live in Somerset or are just transiting through, I don't think we can make them change their behaviour. I think it's an ambition I would probably not aspire to, because it's unrealistic. And I think to say that we're doing it would be dishonest in a way. You can try with limited resources that we have, but I think I would be correct in assuming we don't have a lot of control over that.
You would be correct, and but I hope I didn't give you the impression that I was planning to set up roadblocks on the M5 and force people, oh, your car pollutes too much, get out, you've got to walk the rest of the way to Cornwall. Although actually, no, but the thing is that we are part of government. We may be part of local government. We have a new government that needs further education, and we need to speak up for Somerset and the environment. And it's important that we speak up and use what connections we have with national government to help them, to help people to live lives better, healthier, longer. And that's both in public health issues, but also within the environment. And our role is to lead in that way. I'm a Liberal. You're not going to get me telling people what to do, but you are going to get me to encourage them strongly. But I am starting to like the concept of a roadblock on the M5.
Thank you. Dave Mansell.
Thanks. I will start off by strongly agreeing with Graham that there's good work going on across the council. There's been good projects, good achievements, and you know, I'm so pleased to see that. And a good deal of it is embedded in service teams, and I'm really pleased to see that as well. So definitely there are some congratulations in order for progress that's being made. However, I'm sorry, I have got some doubts, and I do wish to highlight those in a couple of areas. I feel I should start by saying it was about 6 years ago that we declared across all councils across Somerset climate emergencies and the need to work rapidly on this, not least towards a 2030 target. So we've been at this for some time, and 2030 as a target has often been mentioned, including by me. I have to say, though, I have been raising questions about this for quite some time as things have progressed and what we really are aiming to achieve. I completely agree again with what was said about being target driven. I mean, yeah, you can take it too far, but you do need to have a target, a sense of the direction we're heading in, and to work firmly towards it. So I do agree with that, but let's look at the reality of what's going on. The report itself talks in several places about aiming for net zero by 2030. Not with entire clarity whether it's talking about Somerset Council or Somerset as an area. In the past, it was both. There seems to now be becoming a lack of clarity on whether it's the council, and not clear what's expected for Somerset. And I think that must be noted. I have to say, for Somerset, if we're honest, it's past. We haven't acted quickly enough, nor have the government, and it's impossible for Somerset to do it by 2030, I say with great regret. But maybe it can be by Somerset Council. But if we're serious about it, we've got to show what we're going to do. 2030 is not far away. We're taking investment decisions already on what's going to be in place for 2030, and we have done in recent years. So is that a serious target, or what is it? And I am starting to wonder. So good to hear that we're going to have this carbon baseline report. That's important. You've got to have that. What is going to be even more important is what comes next, this clear plan, which Graham referred to. And we need to see that so rapidly. But whether that can get the council to 2030, which clearly it should be its aspiration from what's been said, well, let's see. But a commitment's been made to give that plan. We now need to see what it contains. And I do say I've got my doubts. Now, in relation to targets as well, one reason for doubts is what's been coming through in plans and strategies. And I've not necessarily had a problem with this when I can see we're progressing as rapidly as we reasonably can. And we have now got a whole numbers of plans and strategies from service teams, including for council services, where the target is not 2030. The target in the council plans and strategies, which we've all agreed, is often 2040 or 2050. So we've got ourselves in the most amazing muddle on this. What are we trying to do? We need to be clear. My suggestion would be, it would be really helpful if the Climate and Place Scrutiny Committee could work on this and give some advice cross-party on a way to go forward. I would really like to see that happening, and possibly further work on the climate vision, which I don't believe is finished or adopted yet, would be the right way to do it. And two of us did turn up to a task and finish group with that very purpose in mind. Perhaps that could be restarted, and I hope more members will be willing to take part in it in the future, because there is some important work to be done here. So targets is one area of questions, and I'll be quicker on the other one. And that is to do with the corporate team that we have working on climate. I said, yes, service teams doing this work is really important, but they won't always have the knowledge to know exactly where they should be going. And we do need a central team to help guide them on this. We also need a central team to be working on making sure that the action plans and strategies we've got are target driven and heading where we need to be. And that can't be done entirely by service teams. It does need to be done centrally. We do need a corporate team working on this. Now, as has been said, at one time with the restructure, we were heading to a team of one. I believe it's now two, and I did raise this when the restructure report came through and absolutely lamented that. We've got to get that sorted out. A team of two is not enough. It is not a council taking the climate emergency seriously, and we do need to expand that corporate team to what it was closer even when the council started. We've just allowed the officers to go, and we need to build it back up again. So two big messages there. We've got to sort out the targets, please, and we've got to sort out the corporate team. And especially on the targets, I would be really pleased to contribute constructively and positively on that, to come up with some targets that are sensible for the council and which provide clear guidance for the officers so they have an idea of where they should be heading. I really hope that can be taken on board.
Graham, do you want to comment?
Yeah. Interesting questions. The first one dealing with targets and the issue about whether the 2030 target is a target. It's this council's policy. Can I say I'm slightly disappointed if a paper's come to a scrutiny committee and been set a different target and that committee's accepted that. This council has a policy that this council adopted. We agree that our target is 2030. I've been challenged as to whether I think we will achieve that. In my professional life, I go into very difficult situations where others have failed, and I work hard to succeed. I never go in thinking I won't, because that guarantees failure. And I think if we say that we don't think we're going to make 2030, that guarantees we won't make 2030. And I would hope that all members of this council would realise the seriousness of the situation we face. This isn't just something, I mean, even Trump's starting to accept that there actually is a climate emergency, that we faced serious problems and that this council has to play its part. And so I would ask that councillors will continue until the policy is changed to always remind any officer that the target is 2030, and I'm deadly serious in that, Councillor Mansell, and I will do everything I can to do that. It's interesting that once again we're getting criticised about our slowness. This is local government, and it is by its nature, apart from in floods and things when we move very quickly, a lot of the time tends to be quite deliberate in the way that it approaches things. We do have to pick up our pace, and one hopes that as this council finds its feet as a new authority, we will get further action across the piece. The issue about the corporate team versus the service team, and the importance of whether there's only two in the front, two in a corporate team. I think I've answered that in my previous answer. We do take this seriously. Yes, I'd like a bigger team. Yes, I'd like this council to be having a lot of money to spend on this initiative, and the government to take it as seriously as I think we should. But in the meantime, we have to use the resources we've got wisely to get the progress as we go forward, so that the adults in our county become as well educated and as sensible as many of our children in our schools, the ones I listen to, who are taking climate change very seriously indeed.
A very brief comeback. I've got 7 people waiting.
It will be. Thank you for the response. I like to focus on issues and I don't like to make things political, and I will try and keep to that. I've heard the response. I have to observe the response suggests there is a complete lack of understanding of what is needed to get to net zero. And I find that very sad for this council. And I really hope we can sort that out. There's a problem here. And if this council is serious about aiming for net zero, it's got to have some serious policies, some serious plans, and a serious action plan to get there. And at the moment, this council lacks that.
Lee Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of quick points. Thank you for the report. I note the achievements listed. I note that it's signed by the interim director of public health, which I welcome. But so forgive me, but my questions may be directed either yourself, Graham, or Alison. But I'll start off quickly. 1.2 makes reference, is the first time I've been able to make this point, to the previous public health director of public health. It just wanted to add my thanks for her hard work over the previous years that I've been working with her, and wish her luck in the future. That's the first one. I also recognise the fact that this report is looking back, not necessarily looking forward. So that's where I get my little catch-22 comes into it, because it's wonderful, the report, and I also, with Alison's report that's coming up, it talks about plans, etc. But my question is about challenges. So what do you see as the challenges for the next year, and what are your priorities? So how will we be able to hold you and the Director of Public Health to account for those, please?
I think I'll let the director answer for herself on the things she's going to be held to account to. Firstly, the comments about Trudy was an excellent officer, and I too wish her well, and I echo your compliment. The challenges for the next year are many and manifold, because public health works across such a big sector, and we could look at whether it be sexual health or it be our smoke-free campaign, which is a 2030 target, which I take very seriously, or the hypertension, whatever. However, I think in the very short term, we're unclear about the effects to NHS England and on our local health service and how that will affect us. That is still being unpicked and unravelled. So there may be some new challenges within that, but also opportunities that we don't yet know about. But the report lays down all the key areas that we do, and I don't think I have the luxury of being able to choose which ones I'm not going to take seriously. So I would say all of them. Alison.
Good afternoon. My name's Alison Bell. I'm the Interim Director of Public Health. Delighted to be here this afternoon, and thank you, Councillor Redmond, for your question. Yeah, challenges. Well, I think the biggest challenge is actually, in real terms, our public health grant has reduced by 28% since we transferred to local government. So we're doing much more with significantly less year on year. So that's challenge one. But then to public health, I think what we're seeing is a decline in healthy life expectancy. And that is a real challenge. That means every day in our communities and in our families, people living with more ill health. That's not good for them. That's not good for us as carers, but it's also not good for our services that depend on support. So I think that is a really significant challenge. I've only got 2 more. I think what we're seeing is a really significant rise in economic inactivity as a result of long-term sickness. We have 16,000 people off work in Somerset because of long-term sickness. A lot of those are Somerset Council staff or health service staff or social care staff or indeed teachers. And we need them for their own well-being to be fit and healthy and back at work, but we need them to contribute to our economy. So I think that's our huge challenge. And the third one, because someone said to me, when you have a new job, you can do 3 things, is our smoking targets, actually.
So we will come to that in a minute, but we have a target to support an additional 45,000 people to quit smoking by 2030. That's a huge target, and a tiny public health team, or indeed Somerset Council, can't do that on their own. So those are my 3 things I'd like to do something about.
Ros Wyke.
Thank you, Chair. I read with interest 9.8, which summarises the quite outstanding range of areas within Somerset which we have a responsibility for. And I look at some of them and some of them overlap. For instance, the Mendip Hills is not only a national landscape, but it's also one of the 3 current King Charles's super nature reserves. So there's overlap, but still it is an impressive list. And my concern is, and forgive me, I haven't mentioned this before, so I don't expect an immediate answer. But given that the portfolio goes right across all the different lead members' responsibility, and I think particularly of the developing local plan, how are you going to get the recognition you need from the officers as the local plan is developed, but also because the local plan will be 2 years away before we'll actually see it. What are we doing to ensure that all planning officers are fully up to speed on the elements of these special areas and the implications from planning decisions? I don't necessarily expect you to have an immediate answer, but can you take that on away and think about how you, as a portfolio with a limited amount of staff, how the other portfolios actually report to you on progress in these areas? Because I think that it's really struck me home, this element on page 206. It's an amazing responsibility we have towards the special landscapes of Somerset. The ones which were mentioned earlier that Scream Somerset and Visit Somerset are promoting very hard through tourism and also through filming in Somerset. So this is such a critical area in lots of different areas, and I just wonder how we can actually pull it together, because given we have such limited resources now.
Thank you for your question. I will get you a written answer for the issues around planning officers, because clearly they don't report, they're not directly under my portfolio. But I would make the point about one of the things that's impressed me, and I was not as aware of before I became a member of the executive, is the way that executive members, the other portfolio holders, listen and support and challenge each other. And so I'm quite confident that in the issues, particularly around the local plan, which you've rightly identified is crucial to our environment going forward, that I am not expecting silo thinking, and that I'm expecting that across the piece, all the executive members will be taking the environment in their own areas as seriously as I do. And if they don't, they will hear me talking to them. But I honestly don't think I need to do that, because it is a team approach. You could describe it, and I'm sure Mike Stanton would probably describe it as a team management approach that's being used, although he'd have better words, being a management consultant. That is the way this council, the executive, works. And I think we should all see that with a level of reassurance that it's not being led by one person strongly. We have a strong leader, but actually it's a group of people working collaboratively, and we understand that. And I say that Somerset has got a great lot of land, and we're very lucky to live here. But we also have, I was talking with Councillor Shearer earlier about corporate parents. Well, I think we may all be corporate parents, but we're also corporate guardians for the land of Somerset. And I think we need to take that as seriously as we do our other commitments.
Claire Sully.
Thank you, Chair. I heard this comment: what has Somerset Council ever done for you apart from what we do? And I think public health is an important part of what we do that I think can go under the radar because often it's integrated, it's part of programmes, national and regional, working with our health partners and stakeholders. We obviously hear a lot about potholes, as important as that is. And so I welcome the report that draws out this important work, like healthy, happy, resilient communities is the bedrock, and it's what public health serves to deliver. Since May 2022, I've been asking questions about suicide prevention. We have regular updates on adults and health scrutiny. Sadly, today we heard the devastation of losing our family and friends in this way. Most of us are touched and impacted by a loss, and it affects our communities. In July, we launched a strategy for suicide prevention. Very sadly, Somerset has higher than average rates of suicide. Would the lead member for the public health agree how vital and important this work is, and join me in thanks for the work the Somerset Council has been done in this area?
Thank you, Councillor Selly. The suicide prevention presentation that came to Adults Health when I was Vice Chair of Adult Health Scrutiny touched me, and I think all the members of that committee. And in my new role, I can assure you that I have made it very clear that I take the work we do regarding suicide, which is not uniquely a male problem, but sadly a rural male problem in many, many forms, but that suicide is a sadness and a blight on us, and that every time it happens, I feel we fail, and we have to do what we can to give those people the hope that there is a point to still being alive. And yes, I take this very seriously too.
David Fothergill.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. I had assumed, because I'd missed the last meeting, that tribute had been paid to Trudy Grant at that previous meeting. Apparently not. So if I could just say a few words before I ask two questions of the executive member, I'll just let the room clear. It's obviously a protest. I would like to pay tribute to Trudy Grant. Trudy was the Director of Public Health for the period of time that I was leader of the council. She led during the COVID pandemic. She took public health into the council and transformed it. What she achieved with very limited budgets, I felt was just astonishing. And during the period of the COVID pandemic, she was there, she was on the phone, she was taking meetings, she was leading all the way. And I have only the utter admiration for her, for what she did and what she achieved with this council. And I would like to register that. The fact that she and I were the only people in the council that watched Outlander is beside the point. If you don't know what Outlander is, then ask me another day. So my two questions relate to school public health nurses. It's well known that people's children start in life, the first 7 or 8 years is absolutely critical. You will lay the foundations for the rest of their life, not only in terms of knowledge and attitude and behaviours, but very much in terms of public health and their welfare through life. And unfortunately, over the course of the last few years, we have seen a decrease in the number of school public health nurses. It's within the report, I think it's a 33% decrease, but we are now seeing an impact of that across the country: increased rickets, increased tooth decay, the number of admissions into hospital for tooth extractions, sexual health, all sorts of things are now coming to the surface. So my question is two parts. First of all, has this council signed SAFNA, the School and Public Health Nursing Association's call for a school nurse in every school? And if not, why not? And what conversations have been held with the Integrated Care Board to direct further funding into school nursing? Because if there's ever a case for prevention, it's getting it into school nurses, getting to those youngsters early, and making sure that they don't develop lifelong diseases.
Can I thank you very much, Councillor Fothergill, for your question. And your comments about Trudy, which I echo. And you described the situation that our young people face across the country. I would say that I think it would be harsh and inaccurate to say the reduction in school nurses has resulted in those things, which I thought you were suggesting. We have major problems with our young people, and there's a whole series of reasons why they happen. We had COVID. We also have the fact that it's pretty hard to get
clarify. I think what I'm saying is that they're not picking up the early signs, and therefore those issues are developing. Tooth decay being a perfect example.
It is, and I'll hand over to Alison in a second. She will talk about school nurses and the other 2 points that you raised.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fothergill, for the question, and I will ensure that your thanks and that of Councillor Redmond are passed on to Trudy, who has been my mentor. So I will make sure those comments reach her. Thank you for saying it. To your questions, in terms of our public health nursing service, the health visitors who support children before school, and the school nurses who are a much smaller service who support children of school age. There's a national programme called the Healthy Child Programme, and Somerset's health visiting workforce deliver that in Somerset in totality. We have excellent coverage of a universal offer, and we have an award-winning targeted offer called the Forest Programme. We work with midwifery, we identify vulnerable women and families during pregnancy at 16 weeks and engage them in a programme that follows that family and those children until they're 2 years of age. And that has been acknowledged as exceptional practice. And why am I talking about health visitors when you're asking a question about school age? But it is absolutely the bedrock of giving a good child a good start in life that kickstarts them to achieve in school and to be ready to learn in school. So now I will turn to your questions. School age nursing, school age children's nursing has always been a tiny service in Somerset. I think from memory, it is about 6 staff. We have several hundred schools. We can all do maths. We inherited this service when we came over from the NHS to the council, and we recognised that the evidence base is not as strong for the interventions that school nurses, who are public health nurses, can deliver as it is for health visitors. And actually, they don't do what they did when we were in school. They don't put sticking plasters on you, and they don't look at your hair for nits. And if you mention that to them, they get very cross, so don't. What they do is they work as part of a whole school approach. So this council campaigned for PSHE to be part of the national curriculum so that all children received education about staying healthy. And actually teachers were supported to create an environment where bullying wasn't tolerated, where self-harm was recognised as emotional distress, and children were supported. Now, 6 school nurses are not going to be able to do that, and that's the only resource we had. So we have got, I think it's 188 of our schools signed up to a wellbeing framework, and the school nurses supplement that with one-to-one support for individual children that maybe aren't engaging with health services, and support and work as part of the wider health services to make sure children with asthma have a proper healthcare plan that supports them in children in schools. I think the last thing I was going to say in recognition of the workforce challenge, well, actually 2 more things. I think the health challenges you articulate for children are of concern to me, but probably everyone in this room. The rates of dental decay, I think it's 20% of 5-year-olds have decayed, missing or filled teeth in Somerset. Although we would rag green as our obesity rates for children, that means we're better than the national average, but we are seeing high rates of childhood obesity, which we know stores up health problems. So it is part of a whole system approach to improving health and wellbeing, and that sits under the Children and Families Plan. The ICB are working with us And actually, our paediatric teams in Somerset have grown exponentially. We've got huge paediatric teams in the hospital, but actually we've started to try and do earlier intervention work by working with the NHS. So we are having that conversation with the ICB. And to address our workforce challenges, and I am about to finish, Councillor Bass, is that we have had to grow our own. So there's not health visitors and there's not school nurses sat waiting to come and work in Somerset. So we've been identifying training places and using our public health grant to fund those training places and encourage people to come back and work in Somerset. And that's been really successful. And I think it's a similar model we employed for social workers, wasn't it? And so I think it's not a rosy picture for school age children. Their health and wellbeing indicators are not good. And our services using the resources we have available to us to try and go the extra mile and reaching into the system to mobilise paediatrics, but also teachers as part of our workforce. I hope that helps.
Yoga.
Thanks, Chair. My question is on 4.4 on improving sexual health of Somerset's population. The report mentions concern about access to emergency contraception for under 25s and also potential rise in abortion among under 18s. That particular last part really sparked something in my mind of concern. However, just in the report, the only commissioning change planned is for those aged over 25 so far, not under 25s or under 18s. So what I'd like to know from the lead member is kind of what steps are being taken now to improve access to those contraception for under 18 specifically, and what he hopes the current review of the sexual health pathways will deliver in response to those under 18s.
Thank you very much for your question. The second part about terminations, I will bounce back to Alison. The issue of MAPS is an education issue, because the problem is that people refer to the morning after pill, thinking that you wake up, you think, oh God, and you go and you buy a MAP. The reality is that actually you've got, sorry, all right, you've got 2 or 3 days while it's still effective. And that's part of the message of education we've got to get over to people who find themselves in that position, that actually if they go past that first day, it's not too late. That education issue is something we need to spread. I'm not quite sure how I do the quotes for a press release on that one, but we do need to spread the education message on that. The issue about the terminations, I will pass to Alison.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Oakes. So I'll just expand a little bit on what Councillor Oakes has said, because I think he's absolutely right. We called it a morning after pill, and actually can take it for about 4 days. So there is an education issue, but there's also an access issue. So since COVID, we saw a real change amongst our young people about accessing emergency hormonal contraception through pharmacy. And we don't fully understand why that is. But one change that we had to make as a council is that we restricted access to only under 25-year-olds. So children aged 13 to 25 can access it if they deem to be able to give consent. We recognised that wasn't good enough, so we worked with the ICB and said, do you have money as well? Because they fund abortion services. Can you invest some of your money into earlier intervention? And it's just going through now that we will be able to provide in Somerset all age access to emergency hormonal contraception. So I think that's a really important thing. It doesn't solve the issue of pharmacy access for young people. Pharmacies are threatening collective action, and there's a list of services that they are not going to provide, and emergency hormonal contraception is on that list. So we're constantly trying to juggle how we can reach those young people. We do have a chat health service through our school nursing service that Councillor Fothergill talked, and young people can post a message in chat health and say, I'm struggling to access this, please help. And so a school nurse will reach out to them and phone ahead to a pharmacy and check they'll provide the service, and then support the young person to get in contact with that service. So I think there is lots of work going on, but there is still much more to do. I am not happy that we are reaching every young person, or indeed every person that needs emergency contraception. And the last thing I would say is the trend we are seeing in abortions is not unique to Somerset. There's been a lot on social media about people not liking hormonal oral contraceptions in totality, and that is resulting in an increase in unwanted pregnancy. And so that's part of the story around an increase in abortions, but we are seeing more abortions and more repeat abortions in under 18s, which is a really significant thing to go through, and to go through at that age is really, really challenging. So more to do.
Dawn Denton.
Thank you. I'm just going to go back to the climate report where you also mentioned, oh, by the way, Trixie does say hi. I just thought I'd throw that in. Just you mentioned about taking responsibility, and I think one thing I have noticed in this report is that it's great that there's loads of things going on in relation to organisations, but there's very little reference to the individual. There's one reference where it talks about the citizens of Somerset, but we know that it's individual behaviour that's going to make the biggest change when it comes to climate change. I know people who just actually don't recycle. Those kinds of things would have a huge impact. And then just the second comment I wanted to make is that I'm really pleased to see that there has been a link made between climate and social prescribing as well as well-being. But I would suggest that this has more to do with the NHS. We know the NHS is one of the largest contributors to carbon emissions in the country. So the more well we are and the healthier we are, the less we have to rely on the NHS, which means that we have less carbon emissions. Thank you.
I agree. The issue around healthy, and this is why our smoke-free campaign to try and achieve making Somerset smoke-free by 2030, a serious target. The benefits of that economically, socially, not beyond health, are absolutely incredible, and they're generational. And it would be, if this council did nothing else but that, it would be remembered for an incredible achievement. But we're obviously going to do a heck of a lot else. The individual behaviours is quite interesting, because I was just thinking that when I first got elected to Yeovil Town Council in 1982, I remember trying to persuade the Town Council to urge the District Council to look at recycling, because we didn't have really any recycling. Devon was ahead of Somerset at that time, and now it is normal behaviour for people to recycle. There are people who don't, and we need to find ways to encourage them beyond the roadblocks. But the same with smoking, how smoking now is a minority pastime, and that change over that period. We are capable of great things. We just have to believe in ourselves and get on with it.
John Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to compliment the member on the comprehensive and wide-ranging report, and particularly that we seem to have moved on from measuring the quality of reports in from weight to actually number of pages. But thank you for that. Specifically, I wanted just to thank the members and the officers for the help they've given Martock Division, particularly on the flooding and with Ham Hill. And I encourage everybody to get up there on Ham Hill, the largest hill fort in Europe, in the autumn when it's finished. My question, however, is to ask about the new forest that was trailed nationally last week, which covers Somerset, and just ask the member to comment on how they felt that would help with some of the targets they've talked about earlier on in other questions. Thank you.
Just thank you for your question, and just to clarify, a new forest is not going to cover Somerset. The part of that forest that will affect Somerset directly is the Mendips. However, as I reported earlier, we do take tree planting very seriously, and this will help boost our numbers. If you are lucky enough to come to Ham Hill, which was rightly corrected, was the largest Iron Age hill fort in Europe when at its time. where we're building a new visitor centre. The one that local people said wouldn't happen is happening. We're also building a new wood there as well, but we'll continue to plant trees because they're so important to us, not just in purely environmental terms, but also in the way that they affect mental health. We need more trees.
Right, we've got Mandy Chilcott and then Susanna Hart, and then we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the report. And for me, like the last item and our environment, public health is also everybody's business in Somerset. And I just wanted to sort of give a positive story probably of last night. So via the LCNs, we've had some sessions on health. For me, we have to get to a point where it's a whole system and public and third sector, an approach for everybody. So I think it's widely acknowledged that mental health in young people is a major issue across Somerset. And whilst often those support routes for adults are there, it's often not quite as strong a route if you're a young person, and often it's quite a high barrier or hurdle you need to climb to get mental health support. So we've had conversations in West Somerset and they have trialled. They've got a pyramid of support with high sort of level access to a consultant and down, and they recognise that there needs to be more support for young people. So what has happened is the conversation has started, and the local primary care network and the third sector have started to host a role to put in extra support in the area for young people. That conversation via the LCN has expanded into the town council, and the town council, as of last night, have agreed to put in a bid for SULC funding. Now, what's going to happen moving forward? The proposal is that SULC funding will pay for a year, and then the town council have also already committed to part fund the following year with the primary care network and with the third sector raising money. Now, for me, just looking forward in terms of public health, that is a really exciting possibility. And I think in Somerset, if we can start to work right across the sectors, the possibilities are endless for our health across Somerset. And I put that there as a good news story, but the reason I mention it is this report shouldn't be read in isolation. There are a lot of other sectors in Somerset. You know, we've got all the social prescribing, the getting out and the exercising, often delivered by third sector. We have our health colleagues and friends. And for me, in some way, I hope when I read this report next year, there'll be a little bit more about that cross-sectoral approach to public health, and that it'll expand and move forward with all and everybody focused on the same outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chilcott. I entirely agree. I do think that the area that's not maybe been linked in the past enough has been the role of parish councils, and how parish councils working with whether it be the third sector, whether it be with PCM, whatever, is a way of getting that more local connection. I would point towards the fact that Yeovil Town Council, for example, spends £45,000 a year on youth work, and a big chunk of that has had a whole series of effects, not just in reduction in crime, but also around some mental health issues. So the linkage that you've talked about is incredibly important. And apart from serious targets, I'm hoping the other thing people will take away from this will be your words about the fact we have to work not just as one council and one team, but also as one county, all of the people together, organisations coming together for the common good to help our young people through unprecedented times.
Finally, Susanna.
Can I just respond very quickly? Just to be very clear, that's on top of what they do with the youth work. So this is a new and additional, which is welcome.
Susanna.
Sorry, just tracking back slightly. I'm really alarmed by the issues around teenagers struggling to access emergency contraception. Do we have a sufficient safety net in place? Could we consider asking schools as part of their child protection policies to include a designated contraception lead to help teenagers have support accessing contraception confidentially? And that's something that then via emails could even be accessed potentially during the school holidays as well. I just think that is a big issue and it would be great to get on top of it from the get-go with schools.
Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Hart. I'd like to get on top of it as well. I think that the rest missed it. I believe that a written response, because of the seriousness of the issue you've raised and the complexity of it, I think that a written answer would be a more appropriate way to come back, and also that answer be shared with the whole council.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a complex thing to put in place. It would be quite a quick thing to put in place. So I
It's a
think that's
complex
something
issue, not
highly-
complex to put in place, and my written response will clarify that and help you to understand what I'm saying.
I still think that that's something
better
that
words.
needs to be looked into at pace.
Thank you. I'm going to just say the same thing again. Really, you're absolutely right. It is a complex issue, but I think the idea of us having a written response allows us to go across many departments, because there will be rules around safeguarding, rules around education, what we can and can't do within schools. And I don't want to busk that answer either. So I think a written response would be the most helpful way, because we have been all working really well across our system. And I'm sure between Alison and our other officers, we can come up with some things to assist with that.
It is a prescription only medicine, so it has to be issued in a particular way. So it has to be through a health professional, I'm afraid. But we are being creative and we will provide a written answer.
I completely understand it's a prescription medication. I'm suggesting that there be a designated lead as part of school child protection policies, so that students have someone to go to ask for help. Because you explained that they were sometimes struggling to get into contact with pharmacists. So I'm just giving an idea of a really easy catch-all. Thank you.
And luckily, education doesn't fall under me, so I will make sure that the answer you get is comprehensive and answers your question thoroughly.
Okay, thank you. We're asked to note the report. Item 11, we now move on to, which is the report of the Scrutiny Committee for Climate Place. Martin Dimery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Graham Oakes as well for that report. It's my pleasure to present the annual report for the Climate and Place Scrutiny. A large number of subjects and policies have been scrutinised over the last year, including the bus service improvement plan, waste services, flood management, the local transport plan, active travel, biodiversity net gain, and presentations by Somerset Rivers Authority, Natural England, Wessex Water, Lancaster University, and other agencies and individuals. We are never short of matters to consider, and one meeting every 2 months is frankly not nearly enough. But to highlight a couple of matters in particular, the committee appointed a working group to oversee consideration of Somerset's energy plan at the end of the last financial year, which was chaired by my colleague, Councillor Mansell, who I thank for his immense contribution. The working group made a significant number of positive recommendations, and it took some time for progress to be reported back to the Scrutiny Committee, in part due to the changes in staffing. We were pleased to note, however, in December that many of the recommendations had been implemented or were being developed, and further constructive reports are welcomed. The committee also appointed a working group chaired by Councillor Hobhouse to consider the Council's policy on water quality, bringing in a wide range of experts and consultees. After considerable time and debate, I note that the last 2 weeks, legal advice has been received to the effect that the Council's policy on phosphates in the watercourses suggests our policy needs further consideration, with the consequence of perhaps releasing considerable land for building development. I look forward to this matter being brought back to Climate and Place for further consideration at the earliest opportunity. My thanks to our officers' support, Jamie Jackson, Ayushi Sharma, for their work throughout the year. Also to all officers, past and present, for their huge contributions supporting this scrutiny committee. My thanks also to all members of the committee. We really do have an engaged, knowledgeable and dedicated group of councillors who can be guaranteed never to let a meeting finish too early. Finally, thanks to Councillor Henry Hobhouse, who's been a really dynamic, committed and supportive Vice Chair and has managed to behave himself most of the time. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Diogo.
Thanks, Chair, and good to see the report in full. I have just one question on 3.7, the meeting of the 17th of February, where you discussed the bus service improvement plan allocation. There is one of the BSIP elements is allocation for bus priority signal improvements in Bridgewater. However, I'm concerned about whether or not that will actually go ahead. Last time round, there was the same allocation for bus service improvement signals in Bridgewater, but that was taken out months in. The officer at the time said that the modelling showed that the measures that they were proposing would only offer an 8-second improvement in bus times. And so they felt that it wasn't worth bang for buck, really. And so the money was moved to the Taunton hub instead, transport hub. It's an email in black and white. I see Councillor Wilkins raising his hand. So my question to him, I don't know if a BSIP progress update will come to his committee, or if he's able to get officers updating specifically on this element, but could he seek clarity from officers on what's changed since last year to justify be introducing that bus priority signal improvements in Bridgewater, and obviously ensuring that this time the funding is retained in the town, and whether or not it improves, it delivers improvements greater than the 8 seconds that was ruled out last time round.
Was that to me? I didn't quite get that.
Yeah, no, that was to you as chair of the committee. I don't know if the BSIP, if you get a progress update to your committee.
Well, I can defer to Richard Wilkins on that.
Yeah, Richard will answer.
Thank you for the question, Diego. It's you are slightly conflating two different schemes. The initial scheme, which was removed, was to put actual bus lanes in. This is a very different scheme, and it's to be clear. I think to put Bridgewater with the situation that we would be closing roads in order to put bus lanes in for an 8-second improvement in bus things, on top of all the other schemes that are going ahead in Bridgewater, is an interesting concept. But the new bus priority traffic light scheme is a lot less invasive to Bridgewater. It will increase, it will improve the speed that buses can travel without the invasiveness and the removal of a whole lane to be totally dedicated to buses. This is it's a very different scheme, and you know, where I think it was absolutely correct not to go ahead with the bus lane scheme once the analysis had been done, and also the timing of it. It couldn't have been introduced at the worst time. I think any improvements to the infrastructure of the light scheme is wholly appropriate.
Chair, could I just quickly respond on that one? And I'm just conscious that it's becoming Councillor Wilkins' question time rather than Councillor Mark Dimmery question time. Just part of the funding last year on the signals, I understand, was also reversed because the council then found out that EDF was actually funding some of the signals improvements. So this is why, and it's in black and white emails, this is why I'm slightly confused and unsure whether or not that will go ahead. And never did I say that road should be closed for an 8-second improvement scheme last year. Thank you.
Back to Mark.
Just to point out that issue was brought to the scrutiny committee in order to be passed quite rapidly so that funding could be released for those specific projects. So I have every confidence those projects will go ahead.
Thank you. Mandy.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the report and also the work of the committee. Just had two questions, if I may. there's a part in the paper about a task and finish group update, and it's talking about energy plan, green financing roadmap, and also progress and challenges. It says in the paper it was highlighted that task and finish group has made progress on the energy plan, but has faced challenges in getting the recommendations prioritised. First question, and I'll do the lot, is what does that mean? I'd like to understand. My second point to make is I am really pleased to see a full scrutiny report. I know I've asked over a period of years to have them separately. I find it really helpful to cover what the committee has covered in recent times, because with so many scrutiny committees, you cannot get to all of them. So for me, this is really helpful to have a read through. The only thing, as this is the first, that I find missing is a little bit of a teaser for what's coming along in the coming months. So if you did have interest in a particular topic and you knew it was coming along, you could sort of make an extra bit of effort to get to that meeting. So that for me would have been nice to have seen that on the end of this and all the scrutiny reports. But that's my question for you, the first bit.
Thank you very much. In terms of the energy policy, I think what you're referring to is something I implied during the report, and that is that the energy policy working group was set up just before the beginning of this financial year, and it did meet and it made several recommendations, but it took a very long time for that to come to the committee. As I said, partly it's because of perhaps officers changing roles, and we've lost a number of people along the way, and also because a lot of other issues come up and at short notice, and certain things get bumped down the agenda. Slightly annoying, but that's I think what that issue is referring to. We've now heard one report, and we are really due to hear another one. In terms of what's coming up, well, I'd refer you to the work plan, but the agenda is set on a sort of month-to-month basis. And very often we are, and I'm not saying this in a critical way, but we are bounced sometimes into receiving things at scrutiny at very short notice because of funding requirements, perhaps from external agencies, need to be signed off. So sometimes we can't guarantee, or we can't actually predict entirely when things will come up, at which particular meeting, which point of the year. But I'm very happy to talk to you further and keep you briefed as to what may be coming up in future.
Thank you. I think my point was not everybody looks at every agenda for every scrutiny. So this was the opportunity with the report in front of us to lay that out. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin, for your report, which we're asked to note. Item 12 is the annual report of the Director of Public Health, 24-25, Smoke-Free Somerset by 2030. Alison.
Okay. Thank you. I recognise that time is short, so I'll be brief. Thank you for making time to consider this report and ensure that we as a council have making Somerset smoke-free by 2030 on all of our agendas. It's the leading cause of preventable disease and early death, and 12.7% of our population in Somerset smoke, and we need to get that to 5%. That's 45,000 people to quit by 2030. We have a very small public health team that run a free open access stop smoking service, Smoke Free Somerset. Smokers are 4 times more likely to quit if they have the support, the behavioural support, the pharmacological support, and the support of their family than if they just try it on their own. But we need action across the system, hence why we're bringing it to this committee or this council today. We need to outsmart the advertising agencies that have got a lot more money than us and lure people in that are vulnerable. And we need to normalise non-smoking, particularly among specific groups of our population, those with severe mental illness, those who are in receipt of drug and alcohol services, people living in social housing, and people in routine and manual occupations, because those are the people that are being targeted by tobacco companies and getting people hooked onto highly addictive drugs really early in their lives. The breadth of this report illustrates some really good practice in Somerset, but we need support. Graham and I can't do it on our own, and nor can the team. So we need support to make Somerset smoke-free across communities and individuals, organisations and institutions, and as part of our leadership and as our policies. So if you have ideas after reading this report, or if you can help Mandy through your LCNs, please contact me or Graham and talk about your ideas. We would welcome those because this is an enormous challenge and it really will save lives. Thank you.
As this item has recommendations, we go to Graham, who's going to propose.
I formally propose the recommendations which are on the paper before us.
Thank you. Dawn?
Yeah, I second that. This report, I think that we forget the importance of health sometimes. We spend a lot of time in meetings talking about physical things and potholes and barriers and all sorts of bins, but we forget about our health. And often we forget the impact that those around us can have on our health as well. And I'm really quite conscious of, without our health, those physical things would make absolutely no difference. And conversely, if all of those things crumble, then our health also suffers. So I think it's the most important team at the council, Alison's team, simply because it deals with everything from measles to mental health, babies, buildings, smoking to schools. So for that reason, and all of the work that you do, and this report, I fully support and second it. Thank you.
Thank you. Opening up to questions, David Fothergill.
Thank you very much indeed. So smoking is the single biggest killer in this country that can be controlled. I'm delighted to see the report. I'm also delighted to see the legislation that's currently making its way through Parliament in the tobacco and vaping bill, brought forward by the Conservative Party, but now adopted by the Labour Party and strengthened. So delighted to see it come forward. Within that as well, the additional work that's been done on the banning of disposable vapes from the 1st of June, I think is trying to head off a problem which we don't know is developing, and we won't know how it's developed for 30 years. And my question is quite straightforward. As a unitary authority, one of the benefits is joined up services. I'd like to know what work is being done with trading standards to ensure enforcement of the disposable vapes ban after the 1st of June, and also as we introduce further restrictions on smoking, and also if a licensing regime is brought in for the sale of tobacco and vapes, what additional actions are already being talked about. I'm happy to take a written reply.
Alison.
I will provide a very comprehensive written response, but just to say we did receive additional funding centrally, and we have put some of that into our trading trading standards services. And you will have seen in the media, actually, they've been taking really strong enforcement action across the region. So that's joined up not just across the system and the council, but across the region.
Thank you.
Lee Redmond.
I'm pleased to say that Councillor Fothergill stole most of the thunder that I was going to have, which I appreciate. However, the point I was going to make is around this document and the fact that the legislation around vaping is changing as well. I do note that the vaping is referenced a number of times in the document with different levels of influence. It's good to help you stop smoking, but it's not necessarily healthy. But the concerning element there is how the use of vaping is being taken up by young people. It's scary the amount that is being done. So my question was going to be in relation to this document. Are there any? I'm assuming it will be a live document. I welcome the strategy, but as legislation changes and the fact that things are developing, are we happy that this document will be evolving as well?
Yes.
There will be an action plan that sits behind this that holds partners to account for delivering. Absolutely. And Bridgewater and Taunton College are doing some excellent work around vapes. So read the report, it's in there.
I think I was named, so can I come back very quickly?
You can.
For those that are interested, there's an excellent resource on the LGA website. Questions and answers, everything to do with vape, tobacco and vaping. Highly recommend it to get yourself up to speed on all of it.
Faye Purbrick.
Thank you, Chair. So my question actually comes from what Councillor Fothergill was saying. As a joined up council, trading standards will hopefully be seizing a number of illegal vapes and disposable vapes once the legislation changes. With his joint public health and environment hat on, what plans have we got to make sure that those seizures and any other seizures that our trading standards team do are actually disposed of in an environmentally friendly way? One of the challenges of disposable vapes is the batteries. Can we make sure that if there isn't already a plan for that, there is a plan put in place? And more on the actual report and the recommendations in front of us. As an ex-smoker, I know I quit many times. We're looking to get 45,000 people to quit. Is that every time they quit? Is that 45,000 individuals? And how are we going to make sure that we're helping people sustain that? Because anybody who's given up smoking probably has done it a number of times. Thank you.
The simple answer on the 45,000 is 45,000 individuals. There's no point in getting 5,000 people just to keep giving up. But you're quite right that a number of people do take a number of occasions, and there are some interesting statistics about, I think it's the fourth attempt or something is when most people tend to succeed. A bit like driving tests, you either pass it the first time or the fourth or fifth time. And it's a bit like that with smoking. As for the disposal of that, that falls under waste. Richard.
Yeah, absolutely. There are guidelines about how we dispose of those vapes. I mean, personally, I'd like some more government legislation over the disposable types. I think we all here have a sort of sit with agreement on that. But there are clear guidelines, and there is risks with fires in regard to the disposal, the incorrect disposal of them. But I think you're supposed to put them in a clear bag and put them with the recycling.
Just very quickly, I think what I'm getting at, we know that they're going to be banned, and at the moment they are causing issues with fires. But can we have a strategy? I don't expect us to have one now because they've not been banned yet. But if trading standards are going to be seizing large amounts of these battery-powered things, that there is some kind of strategy for how we are dealing in an environmentally friendly and safe way with that, because that will probably be a larger amount of seizures than potentially before the bans.
Well, Keach.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a comment, really. Quite recently, a pop-up vape shop, as Councillor Osborne will agree with me, appeared in the town overnight, just down the road from our local primary school. And I asked the question, in my ignorance, I assumed that they needed some sort of license or permission to be there, but apparently they don't. And if you go past them, well, they were flooded out, but they've restocked. If you go past, it's very attractive for children because it actually looks like a sweetie shop. And I think that the government should be looking at whether or not some form of licensing should be in place for those shops. I know there's one in Crewkerne as well, but this one in Ilminster just popped up overnight. So just something we need to look at, I think, as to whether or not there's some form of licensing or approval should be given to these shops, because they are dangerous, particularly for us with the children going past there every day on their way to school and on the way back.
Finally, from Alison.
Yeah, that is an issue that is recognised, Councillor Keach, and I think they're trying to include that in the smoking and vape legislation that's coming through. So at the moment we are unable to act on that, but so we're working on educating young people and talking to them about it, but turning off the tap is by far a better way.
Sue.
Thank you. It's just a quick question to Alison. I'm aware of the smoking and vape legislation that's coming along, but it's likely to be imposing, particularly if you're going to have to enforce this enhanced legislation, it's likely to impose a new burden on us. So are we likely to receive any new burdens funding to actually put into trading standards so they can do this well
and licence? And is it worth actually asking our MPs as to whether or not they can lobby for this type of funding, because it is going to be an extra burden for us if we want to do it properly and effectively. And I think, as you know, both Councillor Keach and I share the same concerns when these shops pop up very close to primary schools and on the same side of the road.
Thank you. Graham, do you want your final say?
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. The situation is, yes, we would certainly welcome more money. We welcome our MPs lobbying for it. The challenge will be a big challenge, but the prize is even bigger. So we do have to see what we can do to make sure we drive down vaping as quickly as possible, except for those people who need to give up, like Councillor Birbeck, who would need that direct support. So we would benefit from additional funding to help that in its path.
Thank you. The recommendations have been put on as recorded on pages 241 and 242. Could I have a show of hands, all those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? One, and that is carried. Moving swiftly on to item 13, which is the annual report of the Pensions Fund Committee. I'm just being told now that we're up to the 4 hours and we need now to agree to an extension probably for another half an hour. Is that okay? No, but you've got to get through it. Right. Keep going. Can we, if we get through, we've got one more substantive to do, which is the pensions, and then the last one we've pretty well covered. So if we can get this one done through Simon Coles. Yes. Okay. Right, so if we move on to this item, which is 13, which is over to you, Simon.
Okay, thank you. I present the report for the pension fund as printed, and happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Simon? No, that's good. Okay, thank you, Simon. We're asked
Thank you, Chair.
You were asked to note your report. Item 14, we have already taken the two written, unless someone can prove to me that they have an urgent question that can't wait for 12 days to the 7th of April for the executive, then yes.
I had a question for Liz with her proper Liz hat on, because you're wearing lots today. I was looking back, I'm aware at the moment inflation is above where the country would like it to be, running between 2.5% and 3%. It's for Liz. Can you hear? Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it's above where we were expecting it to be. When a report came to, MTFS report came in October to the executive, in setting the budget we've just set, part of that was some reductions that were made around a low, medium and high figures. When I asked at that meeting, inflation wise, what had been factored in, because we were using the medium figures, it was inflation at 2%. Now I'm conscious that that's quite different now, so I'm just wondering whether our budget for this year will be affected by the higher than expected inflation rates.
Thank you, Chair. I think it already is. I think the growth that's in the budget for 25-26 is greater than we would have hoped in the medium scenario. So I think we have already allocated more under growth than we might have wanted to do. But we also have such things as the pay award and other things where we're paying directly ourselves. So where we've looked at growth, that's in provider costs in places. So that always, of course, goes to negotiation by our commissioners. So I think we've probably taken more into account. We've also in the budget, as you know, we've put risk provision and a contingency, but that doesn't mean we want anyone to think that that's kind of money that can be allocated to directorates easily, because it won't be. It will be held centrally in the corporate centre until or unless it's needed. And I'm sure with the approach of the 151 officer, that will need to be a really good case to release any of that risk provision or contingency. But certainly on the pay award, there's 2% in the budget. So it reduced a bit today to 2.8%. I think everyone in the country would like it to be 2% or lower. I don't know exactly what goes in the basket that comes up with that inflation figure. And I've heard lots of people saying actually their household inflation is considerably greater than the figure they see in the press and media.
Thank you.
If I could just come back quickly, the reason I ask is it was over 30 million between the medium and high, which could be a potential 30 million. And of course, all of our council tax has gone up, which won't have helped any home in Somerset, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Right, Susanna, you have an urgent question that can't wait.
Well, following on from the extremely moving question asked by John Wilkins at the beginning, I'm just still gravely concerned because we've been awaiting publication of the audit, specifically on the Life Factory, now for nearly a year. There are many contractors aside from John and small businesses at risk from going under financially due to non-payment. Can I ask when the report is going to come to the audit committee and when I will be able to have sight of it? Further, can I also ask that I be invited to attend the meetings concerning this matter moving forward, please, because this needs a resolution and it needs one now.
Liz?
As I said, the short answer is when the work is complete by South West Audit Partnership. It is not yet complete. And I'm arranging for a meeting tomorrow. I've spoken to Nicola Hicks already about that this afternoon. Nicola's made the good point that as well as comms and 151, we also need legal there as well, because as you'll recall, when I said earlier this afternoon that we are the accountable body, we are accountable to MHCLG for the money that has already been drawn down by the project and paid to contractors. So we do have a lot of work to complete. The longer it takes, the more convinced you can be by how complex the situation is. Thank you.
I do understand that it's extremely complex, so I'm asking, am I allowed to attend those meetings? And if not, can they be reported back to me? Because these are people in my area and I need to be able to give them answers, and they've been waiting too long now. Thank you. I'm sorry to be insistent on this. I don't want to be difficult.
I just need to come back to say that the Town Deal Board is in the same situation as you and the other Glastonbury councillor, Councillor Nick Cottle.
I don't sit on the Town Deal Board, so I have no way of feeding information back to the people who are desperately reaching out to me. So I feel like I need to be involved if that is possible. And if not, at least to have reported back to me in the minutes or something, because I have no answers to these people and it's not fair.
Chair, whoever sat on the Town Deal Board, they wouldn't have that information. The minutes of the Town Deal Board meetings are published as soon as they're agreed. They're on the website as soon as they're agreed at the next meeting. But that is an advisory board, the Town Deal Board, the same as in Bridgewater. It's an advisory board. This council is the accountable body, as I keep saying.
Right,
there has to be something.
Can you, I think you've had many goes at this. I suggest you speak to Councillor Lation after the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Because we're going over the same ground each time, but I think a conversation between the two of you may move things forward. Martin Well.
Thank you, Chairman. Last 24 hours, there's been a BBC News report. Its town theatre could remain shut until 2027. It's that doyen of local democracy, Daniel Mumby, did the report, so it must be true. To be quick about it, the documents haven't been prepared by this council to prepare and to get the bid for the £10 million, and it's been delayed, and that is the reason for the basis of this report. Can we have some reassurance, please, especially for the people of Yeovil and the hinterland of Yeovil, that this will be prepared and this 10 million grant will be obtained? Otherwise, it will be delayed after 27 by the speed in which that report has been prepared. It is urgent, Chairman.
I have the very man that can answer that.
Yeah, thank you. So for absolute clarity, this authority is progressing with the business case. It is the decision of DCMS as to whether they grant the funding. There is no delay on our part. This council and its predecessors have gone to great lengths and great expense to prepare the necessary surveys in order to be able to submit that business case. So it is happening. Whether the decision runs in our favour is outside of our control, of course, but we are absolutely adhering to all of the timelines as required by DCMS, and we continue to travel in hope that they will see this as a positive business case and grant us the 10 million.
Thank you for that. I did say it was a BBC report, Chair.
As chair of the Octagon Project Board, I can back up what's just been said. We're not letting it lie down, and unfortunately the change of government didn't help. But right, that concludes the meeting. Thank you for staying on, and have a safe journey home.